Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 180. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, which you can see on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV and 8 p.m. on Fridays on ABC News or anytime you like on iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America or on YouTube on the ABC News In Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening to us, you can also find PEP on YouTube and Facebook, where you'll also find timestamps and show notes in the blurb. And if you leave a comment under those videos, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us at PEPCasterDave. If you want to contact me privately, ask me on Twitter and I will allow you to direct message or email me, or you can just direct message me on Facebook. But for now, let's meet a new guest who I severely doubt would ever raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I'm talking, of course, about the Australian Institute's Emma Shortis. Hello, Emma.
Hey, Chaz. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to PEP. Do you have a disclaimer?
I don't really. So I'm Senior Researcher in International and Security Affairs at the Australia Institute, and I don't think there's anything I'd say here that I wouldn't say representing the Australia Institute, so I think we're cool.
So this is all official, the official opinions of the Australia Institute from here on in.
I regret that.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Emma.
Sure. So I'm a historian by training, actually. Did my PhD partly on the history of American foreign policy and then spent a year in the States finishing it off. And out of that wrote a book about Australia's relationship with the United States called Our Exceptional Friend, Australia's Fatal Alliance with the United States, which kind of gives you a hint at my vibe, I suppose.
Sure.
But I look mostly at US foreign policy, but US politics and history as well, through, I guess, looking at it from the view of the Asia Pacific.
Sure. Well, that's way more qualified than me, so you're carrying us for the next few hours. For your information at home, we are recording this at 9:16 p.m. Sydney time on the 24th of September. That's Tuesday. I don't know if I can get this out on Tuesday night or on Wednesday afternoon. Let's see how tired I am when we're finished and whether I want to do an edit or not. This is a bit of a bonus, but PEP, so because there's been a bunch of stuff which we haven't had a chance to cover, so we're going to be covering a bunch of stuff from the last week or so. It's not going to be super up to date, I don't think. But before we get into the content, is there anything that you're grateful for, Emma?
There is, Chaz. Actually, at the moment, I am really grateful for the Northern Hemisphere's winter, because what it means for us is that in January, a bunch of great American musicians and bands are coming to Melbourne, which is where I am. So in the space of like a week, I'll get to see in January first Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings, and then Rufus Wainwright, and then a little band called Medium Build out of Anchorage, Alaska, who I adore. So I'm kind of hanging on to the prospect of January and being past an American election. So I'm glad that Northern Hemisphere winter is bringing all these musos out into our summer.
Well, it's now clear that your musical taste is significantly too cool for this podcast. We were talking about Oasis. but that's good. You're giving us some cred. I appreciate it, Emma. Thank you.
I don't know if Rufus Wainwright's cool, but what about you, Chad? What are you grateful for?
He's cooler than Oasis, I'll tell you that. My grateful is I want to thank Flick for my grateful. She sent me she's one of the Peppers. She sent me a video which I love. It's referring to it's a long video, but I think it's worth it. It's one of Trump and Stephen Miller's favorite talking points that we hear all the time these days is that Venezuela are emptying their jails into America. And so therefore, the talking point goes, the crime rate in Venezuela has dropped right down while the crime rate in America has gone way up to the highest in the world. Now, of course, the crime rate in America has not gone up, it's going down. And most migrants, you'll be surprised to hear, are not from jails, and they're not from insane asylums, and they're not Dr. Hannibal Lecter. In fact, the Venezuelan Violence Observatory says that there are 26.8 per 100,000 people violent deaths in Venezuela. So 26.8, violent deaths per 100,000 people in Venezuela. But in 2022, the FBI said there was 6.3 in America. So America has a quarter of the violent deaths of Venezuela, according to the Venezuelan Violence Observatory, which is the independent body, as opposed to Maduro. Anyway, Steve Miller loves using that talking point, but he ran into a bit of a buzzsaw recently in the form of one very mild-mannered yet persistent journalist from Venezuela, Jose Maria del Pino. Now, this clip goes the full clip goes for 5 minutes. I'm going to play 3 minutes of it. If you don't want to listen, just skip ahead 3 minutes. I can understand why you wouldn't want 3 minutes of Stephen Miller, but it is pretty good. So if you want to see Steve Miller have an aneurysm, just enjoy.
And look at this Venezuelan gang. You have a Venezuelan gang that is taking over entire apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado, and that's responsible, by the way, for some of the most heinous crimes that have happened all over the United States. The crime rate in Venezuela is down, I believe, a little bit over 60% over the last several years.
Are you trusting the official figures from the Venezuelan dictatorship?
Let's put it this way. If you're a dictator of a poor country with a high crime rate, wouldn't you send your criminals to our open border?
That wasn't my question. Are you trusting the figures of the dictatorships? Those are Maduro numbers.
I am believing that it is in the interest of a criminal dictator to let his criminals out of their jails and come to our country.
Do you have numbers, real numbers, not dictatorship numbers?
The Venezuelan gangs that have, you've seen the CCTV footage. I have a question. Who do you think? Answer me this.
My family is from Venezuela. I know very well the situation of Caracas and many other cities.
Right, and tell me, who were the people with the high-powered rifles in the hallway of that apartment building? Who were they?
They were gangsters from Venezuela.
Right. No American community.
But I was asking to you about figures, numbers,
what I'm
facts.
saying to you is the facts are the dead bodies. The facts are...
You said that Caracas has a lowest crime rate than the USA.
The facts are the mutilated bodies. The facts are the people in the morgues that are dead.
I was asking you about Caracas and the numbers in Caracas. Are you trusting the numbers of the dictatorship
I am trusting the fact that Kamala Harris is letting illegal immigrants into this country who are raping and murdering children.
I had been very respectful. Why are you yelling?
Do you know who Jocelyn Ungary is? Do you know who she is?
Do you know how many people is experiencing violence in Caracas?
Who is she? Who is Laken Riley?
Why are you yelling again?
Because I'm yelling because children are being raped and murdered.
I was just asking for figures, and you have not replied to me about those figures.
Murdered. Do you know who Kayla Hamilton is?
Do you trust the numbers of Nicolas Maduro? I'm asking again.
I trust a ruthless dictator will empty his prisons and send their criminals to our country.
So you trust his numbers?
The most dangerous gang in Venezuela is now...
You trust Nicolas Maduro?
I trust that he does not want his criminals to be...
So you believe in his numbers?
I believe he's sending his criminals to our country.
And do you think that the crime rate in Venezuela have decreased?
Do you not believe the law enforcement reports of Venezuelan gangs in this country?
I was asking for the Venezuelan government figures, not the figures here.
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not? Yes or no?
What are the figures that you say to say that in Caracas the number is lower than in the USA?
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not?
So you don't have numbers?
You know who has numbers? The Department of Homeland Security. You can ask Mayorkas for numbers. You can ask the Director Ray for the numbers.
Sir,
I'm telling you.
You said that in Venezuela the crime rate is lower than the USA.
Yes, because
what are your numbers? That's my question.
Because the criminals are here now.
Those are Maduro's numbers.
I can tell you again that Border Patrol agents are encountering thousands
of
Maduro
numbers?
I trust the border agents in our country.
But I am not saying that Caracas has a lower crime rate.
Children are dead, and you are wasting my time.
No, I am not wasting your time. I'm asking for facts as a journalist.
Do you have any remorse for the dead children? Do you care at all about the dead children?
Absolutely.
Then that's what I want to leave you with, is that Donald Trump will come to office.
I was just asking for figures.
I love when we get to the point where Steve Miller is literally demanding that the journalists show remorse for murdered people in a bid to get him to please stop asking him to back up his dodgy stat. And the top of his head, his bald head, is getting sweatier and sweatier as it goes on. It's just glorious. I'm so grateful for that polite, softly spoken journalist who just would not put up with his shit. Anyway, let's get some correspondence going here. Let's just. I didn't have time to do a proper stock take because it's Tuesday, but there are a couple of quick ones I reckon we can rattle through here. Debate correspondence. This is from Open Minded. Regarding the second debate, going to the scenario I offered last week where Trump offers to debate on Fox knowing it would be rejected, Harris's team has turned this scenario around with an ex-post challenge to Trump to debate on 23rd of October on CNN using the same format as earlier in the Biden debate, i.e. where Trump beat Biden and claimed he thought it was very fair. Will Trump take this bait? Open Minded asks. And I suppose should Trump take this bait is the other question. Do you have any thoughts about whether Trump should go through with another debate on CNN there, Emma?
I mean, I think for the purposes of accountability and democratic integrity, of course he should. I think it's that we've had so few opportunities to actually hear from candidates in that context that another debate would be, I think, really useful to the American people. Whether he'll do it or not, I mean, I don't know about you, Chaz, but I don't think so. Like, I don't know what his interest would be in doing it. I don't think anything has changed since the last time you spoke about this and talked about why, he wouldn't want to do a debate. And I think it's pretty clear that the campaign is focusing really just on the base, on those kind of disparate groups of people who are kind of perennially online rather than a kind of much broader audience. So look, I'd be very surprised if he decided to do another debate, but his calculations might change. He might decide he can win. He can be unpredictable that way. I don't know. Do you think he'll do it?
Well, I really haven't changed my view, which is it depends on the polling. I think that if Harris has another couple of good polls, she's had a few good polls in the last couple of days, if that, say, 2.5 point, 3 point margin becomes a 4 point or a 5 point margin, I think he will. But I think if it doesn't, then I think he's correctly diagnosing that debating her is not a great idea for him. And so I think he will continue to not debate her if he can possibly avoid it. So I suspect that, we will not see that debate. But, who knows? Russian correspondence from Glenn Peterson. I shouldn't have said your last name. Sorry, Glenn. But Ryan Macbeth, he's not saying anything bad. Ryan Macbeth did an investigation into End Wokeness. I spoke about End Wokeness, the Twitter account, last week and said how a number of people think that End Wokeness is Russian. Ryan Macbeth is a military dude who does video blogs on YouTube. He did an investigation to End Wokeness, and he's confident that it's Jack Posobiec who is End Wokeness. It's an interesting video, Glenn says, where he explains how he came to that conclusion. And look, I watched that video that Glenn pointed to, and he's right. It is an interesting video. So I'm going to put it in the homework, and you can look for yourself, and you can decide whether you think that he's right, that it's Jack Posobiec. I must say, I found his analysis convincing. In particular, I don't want to spoil, but in particular, the thing he pointed out was that there are 5 occasions when End Wokeness has retweeted Jack Posobiec 1 second after Jack Posobiec tweeted, which seems like a bit of a giveaway. Like, I'm sure everyone's just sitting there on Twitter just waiting for Jack Posobiec to tweet so they can retweet it. But, I reckon
set up.
Yeah, I reckon that's what Ryan was saying was that it's probably a 2 keyboard scenario happening, the End Wokeness keyboard and the Jack Posobiec keyboard. But anyway, you can look at that VA for yourself because it was interesting. Routh correspondence from Tom. Going to be honest, the dunking on someone with clear mental health problems for what seemed like 30 minutes seemed a bit much, guys. Yeah, when you put it that way. I didn't at the time I was having great fun, but when you put it that way, I read that and thought, yeah, you might be right. Maybe 25 minutes rather than 30 minutes. Maybe slightly less joy than we showed when we were laughing it up. Yeah, look, you got to have a bit of fun, but yeah, you probably make a good point, Tom. We probably could have shown slightly more restraint. So yeah, I just wanted to read that out because I thought that was fair enough from Tom. And then along the same lines, Fat City Architect has some machine gun correspondence. And I'm pretty sure this is correct. I haven't bothered to check it up, but this does ring a bell for me. I think this is right. And it's interesting. You can own a machine gun in the USA, just not a new one. It's only machine guns that were in private ownership before 1986. They're also the guns that are licensed, registered in the USA. As a result, a legally owned machine gun in the USA can be very expensive and sell through specialist auction houses. Try $16,000 for a World War I vintage Vickers machine gun, or $500,000 for an FN mini belt-fed light machine gun, which was a new design in the 1980s and still in use in the military today. Incidentally, the US military buys them for about $10,000. So there you go.
Oh, I was surprised when you were in that segment when you were talking about owning machine guns being illegal in the United States. That didn't kind of track with what we know about gun culture and gun ownership in the United States. So yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, it does. But let's get into some actual content here. Emma, at the end of the last PEP, I was talking about, in the Chaz Unleashed, I was talking about how I was of the view that what we were going to see for the next 6-7 weeks was Trump trying to talk about immigration as much as he possibly can, going from one town to the next and going, hey, look, Haitians, or hey, look, Somalians or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Kamala Harris going from one abortion story to the next and trying to make abortion the issue in the election. Maybe they're both making the issues for their respective bases. Certainly what we saw this week was a lot of Kamala Harris, I think, but campaigning on the abortion issue. And I know that you've been looking into that a little bit, so I might just leave it to you to take it away.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, you were absolutely right last week, Chaz, to say that the Harris campaign is focusing on abortion as an issue. It is strategically, it makes sense for them. Harris has been strong on abortion for a long time, as you've discussed, since, really the last kind of 12 months, even before she was the candidate. And they have been doing this thing where, of course, they hook on to individual stories and personal stories to kind of make the overturning of Roe v. Wade real to people and give them kind of something to hang on to in terms of women's experiences. And they've been doing that fairly consistently. But as you said, in the last week, that's been, I think, almost kind of taken to another level, not least because there were two particular cases in Georgia that came to light out of basically like a state-based review program committee that looks at the deaths of women, and two case results, as I understand it, were leaked basically to ProPublica. They're not usually made public, but ProPublica got their hands on two of these cases. And the case of Amber Nicole Thurman in particular is one that was first reported on by ProPublica and then was kind of picked up by the campaign and featured pretty heavily in that Oprah special that Kamala Harris did on Friday, our time, last week. So they had her family on talking about her preventable death. So basically what happened is that she was only 28 years old. In 2022, she had a legal medication abortion in another state. So she couldn't have one in Georgia because Georgia has a 6-week abortion ban. Yep. And so she went out of state to get a legal medication abortion and had an extremely rare complication, which meant that she needed more medical care. She needed what's called a DNC, so went to her local hospital to get that care. But of course, because Georgia had made it a felony to perform this procedure, physicians basically wouldn't do it. You know, they were too worried. It's very familiar case. So this poor woman spent 20 hours in sepsis, so in pretty terrible infection, but treatable infection. But by the time the doctors finally agreed to treat her, they finally decided basically her life was at enough risk that they could safely treat her without fear of being prosecuted or losing their licenses. She became too ill and she died. She passed away. So this horrific case has, of course, got a lot of attention. And as I said, her family went on Oprah and talked to Harris about it. And then Harris has been talking about this case a lot as well. So she went and did another campaign rally after the Oprah special too, in fact, and talked about this case again. And has been talking about it alongside another case out of Georgia, a woman, Candy Miller, who became pregnant unexpectedly, but had existing underlying health conditions that meant pregnancy was incredibly dangerous for her, you know. And of course, again, there's an abortion ban, and because the conditions were underlying and existing and not an immediate threat to her health, they didn't come under that exception of a threat to the life of the mother, which, as we know, is a dicey exception anyway. And so what Miller did was basically order medication online and took it herself at home and had complication, got sicker and sicker, and eventually died at home. Her partner found her in bed with her 3-year-old beside her. These are horrific stories, like just so grim. And the case review found that Miller didn't seek medical treatment because of the ban. She was basically too scared to seek medical care. So both of these cases have been reviewed and basically found that these deaths were preventable, and they occurred due to this ban in Georgia. So Harris has been talking about both of these cases, and you know, also kind of highlighting the fact that in Georgia in particular, Black women are much more likely to die of these kind of pregnancy complications than white women. So there's a kind of structural inequality that is particularly, I think, present or magnified, I suppose, in Georgia. And so Harris has been talking about this in Georgia for a campaign event in Atlanta and then in Wisconsin the same day. But I think what's particularly interesting about this one, Chaz, is because a lot of the stories that Democrats have been highlighting, going back even to Biden, like to Biden's State of the Union address where he had, you know, women in the audience, the stories that they've been highlighting there are the kind of, like, I hesitate to say it, but like good women stories. You know, it's women who had pregnancies that were very much wanted but were lost for whatever reason, and they suffered through, you know, horrendous infections or complications, things like that. Women who for a period of time weren't able to access IVF. You know, it's those kind of stories about women who wanted to have babies but couldn't get medical care because of abortion bans. These are different, right? And particularly the Thurman case is quite different, and the way Harris is talking about it is different as well, because she's framing it for what it is, that this young woman, as Harris said, had a plan for her life. She was studying, she had a son already, and you know that she had a plan for what she was doing next, and that plan didn't involve having another baby. And so Harris said, you know, when she discovered she was pregnant, she decided she wanted to have an abortion, and that is a really different way of talking about reproductive rights than it has been in the past. And Jessica Valenti pointed this out on her Substack, that this is a completely different case where we're not creating, as she describes it, this kind of hierarchy of good and bad abortions, and good and bad women in particular. You know, it's just the argument that all women are deserving of care and of choice, and to be able to, you know, live out their plan as they wish, and that, you know, as Valenti put it, that the punishment for not doing that should not be death. So I think it's really quite a significant change. And go.
No, I was going to say, can I ask on that? Because I think you're absolutely right that in Amber's case, she just moved out from home, and she wanted to enroll in nursing training, and she already had a kid. She didn't need to have twins, and she just didn't want to have the twins, and so she just wanted to have an abortion. And the thing which I love about this, and this is what I want to ask you about, is, I'll go through some of the conservative arguments that have been raised in a second, but none of them are, well, she shouldn't have gotten an abortion. No one's saying that, which is, I think, a sign of progress, like that, because you're right that in the past, especially with Biden, there was always these saintly, virgins who somehow end up having an abortion. Yeah, and you're right. We've just moved into normal people now wanting abortions for normal reasons, and that's cool. I mean, do you see this as a sign of progress?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's pretty remarkable, especially in the US context, where Democrats have been kind of afraid to do that kind of full-throated embrace, really, of reproductive rights, which we know was a thing for Biden because of his Catholicism. He always kind of struggled a little bit with that issue. So for Harris to kind of change the way they're talking about it, I think is really heartening, and I think it is a significant step in that sense. But it is kind of logical as well in the freedom narrative that they've been going with, that kind of effort to reclaim freedom and individual freedom to make decisions about your body and your life. And so it's entirely logical to make that argument. But the fact that they're doing it and doing it unapologetically on Oprah, I think is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I interrupted you. Did you want to keep on going, or?
I think I wanted to say that I think it's significant that this is happening in Georgia in particular, and that Harris is in Georgia talking about it. Because of course we know how close Georgia is, but also there's been a New York Times, I think it was a New York Times poll done kind of towards the end of August that said that for women younger than 45, abortion has now overtaken the economy as the single most important issue to their vote. And I think in Georgia, that's hugely significant. And I think kind of combined with the rest of what's going on there, I actually think the likelihood that Harris wins Georgia is pretty high. I wouldn't be willing to call many of them, but Georgia, I'd be getting close to saying I think she can win Georgia. And I think that's why she's there and why she's talking about these women in Georgia particularly. Well,
if Harris did win Georgia, that's getting damn close to game over, I reckon. That's a big win if she gets that. I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised if she did, because it's looking pretty close. So it's just vibes that I'm basing that on entirely. But I think she could do it. Yeah. It's interesting actually that, I mean, it's not like Harris needs North Carolina to win the election. If she wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that's it. But if she wins Georgia as well, then even loses Michigan, as long as she wins Georgia, she'd be okay, because she couldn't lose Pennsylvania. But North Carolina is obviously a bonus. But it's interesting. I was seeing in the polls that North Carolina, I think it's probably because it's an older state. Abortion seems to do worse as an issue in North Carolina than any other state, pretty much. Certainly any other swing state. But I can see how targeting the female vote through an abortion message would make sense given Mark Robinson's efforts in North Carolina. I can't imagine he's a real turn on for too many women in North Carolina.
I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't imagine so.
Yeah. But I just wanted to ask you about like I said, I want to throw some conservative framing at you and get your response. See what arguments do you think make sense or not accordingly. I we've seen three major arguments, especially about the Amber case, but it's not the Candy case is not that different in terms of the arguments.
Yep.
The first thing is we don't know for sure why she wasn't operated on. Like the ProPublica said, it's not clear from the records available why doctors waited to provide D&C to Thurman. Now, I think my personal view is that it's kind of obvious. Like, even if it's not in the records, they go, well, why do you reckon they didn't operate on her for 20 hours? And they consulted, in the records it says they consulted with each other twice during that period. She's sitting there bleeding on the table for 20 hours, risking infection. Or she had an infection already at that point.
Yeah, she had one.
Yeah. So she's sitting there with an infection not being treated. I can't, unless they're negligent, I can't imagine any other reason for them to not do it. So I think that's a pretty poor argument, but do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I totally agree. And I think there are just too many stories of women having similar experiences in states with, restrictive abortion bans that it's logical that that's what's happened.
Yeah. Okay, so the next argument is I'll just refer to the actual law here. This is the Life Act, which was passed in 2019. It's a heartbeat rule, so there's no abortions after 6 weeks, basically, of gestation. But it allows abortions in the case of medical emergencies, which it defines as a condition in which an abortion is necessary in order to prevent the death of the pregnant woman or the substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. That's their definition of a medical emergency. Okay, and so the conservative argument for this is that the law as written in Georgia allows this exception for Amber Thurman, in that it was a medical emergency, obviously, and the fetus had no heartbeat. The fetus was dead. The fetus had already been aborted. And so there's no reason why the doctors could not perform a D&C, because it was part of the exceptions. And the third argument, which ties to that, is in fact it's not even an abortion. The fetus is dead at this point in time. So the D&C, you can perform whatever you like, whatever procedures you like, because the fetus is no longer alive, so it's not an abortion. And so their argument is, this is not about Georgia's laws. This is about doctors not following the law and not doing what they have the right to do. What's your argument? What's your feeling about that argument?
Yeah, look, I've certainly seen that this, the framing that this is a particular individual case of negligence. And you can certainly see why conservatives are reaching for that argument. I think what you see consistently in those abortion ban states is significant confusion about the language of the law and how you actually make that judgment about, when something becomes life-threatening. And consistently in these stories, medical providers seem to be kind of the view that it needs to be a clear-cut and immediate threat to the life of the woman, as in her heart might be about to stop any moment, not if we leave this for 48 hours, then it may get to that point. And those are the stories that we're seeing consistently. And women, of course, unverified, but women, posting on social media about being turned away from ERs and being told to come back when, you're having the worst experience of your life, or, if you're still bleeding in 3 days, then come back. And so it does seem that there is this legal murkiness that is making medical providers really afraid to take action, because they do face significant penalties. Like in Georgia, it's up to 10 years in prison. Like nobody wants to go to a prison in Georgia. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have also seen, Chaz, like arguments on probably the more activist left, I suppose, if that's the right description, also being really critical of medical providers, saying, at what point are you kind of abrogating your responsibility because you're worried about a murky law, when you know that you so clearly know what's going to happen to this woman if you don't treat her now. And I mean, there is maybe something in that argument. It's not fair and it shouldn't be the focus. But, given the situation we're in, I think it is probably a question that does need to be asked occasionally. Like, what are your responsibilities, moral responsibilities here, above and beyond kind of legal murkiness, I suppose. But maybe that's unfair. But.
No, look, I understand. Sorry, I just got to get the lights back on here. It's one of the ABC late at night. They save money by turning the lights off. I understand the argument made by the left that you just described, saying, your job is to save lives and do your job. I get that. I also, I think you made a great point as well about the uncertainty that just, like, these guys aren't lawyers, they're doctors. Mm-hmm. And I know they've got lawyers, but their lawyers they've got, their job is to cover their ass. And anyone who's had one of those legal opinions from a cover your ass lawyer knows exactly what they sound like. And they sound scary. That's what they sound like. Yeah. And it's easy for Joe Blogs 274 on Twitter to have a go, but they're not the ones facing 10 years jail. And it's not unreasonable when we look at the last 5 years or so of legal developments. It's not unreasonable to think, well, what I think the law is now is not going to be the law when my case comes up in 6 months' time, because it changes fast. And there are some crazy judges out there. And also, if you've been paying any attention to the way the law works, you would know that if some right-wing activist group wants to take you on, they're not going through a normal judge. They're going through the most right-wing judge they can possibly find. And then at a bare minimum, you're looking at 2 years of your life and several appeals up to the Supreme Court, at a bare minimum. But in reality, you might be looking at 10 years jail. And you just don't know. You don't know where the law's going to be. And these guys keep on pushing the boundaries. Like, the activists keep on pushing the boundaries. So for you to be scared of that, I think is totally rational. And I would say, I would put this to the legislators. I would say to the Republican legislators, if you want to make absolutely crystal clear that these surgeries are okay, then put it in the law in a way that no one could be in any doubt whatsoever. If there's any ambiguity, it's your fault, because you know the scenario in which this is going to happen. So I feel like blaming the doctors is a bit cheap, I have to say. Maybe my take.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And I think putting it back on the legislators is absolutely right, because we know that Republican legislators aren't going to do that. Like, part of the point is the murkiness, is to make people afraid, to make women afraid to seek medical care in the first place. That's the whole point. And it's working in places like Georgia.
There are 10 states with ballot amendments in this election associated with abortion. Do you personally think, I mean, I know we're talking about the issue here rather than about the politics, but to move to the politics for a second, do you think they make any difference for the election? Do you think they drive, I mean, a cynic would suggest that that Democrats might be trying to put as many abortion ballot questions on as possible during this election to try and drive the vote. Do you think they make any difference at all, or do you think that that voters separate them and it doesn't make much difference?
I think it's really hard to tell. Like, I've seen some really interesting research that suggests that voters do separate the issues, like the classic case being, of course, Kentucky last cycle, reliably red state, overwhelmingly voted in favour of reproductive rights. And that took a lot of people by surprise, I think. But it does make sense in that, a majority of Americans are in favour of having access to abortion and reproductive rights. So in terms of the results, that makes sense. But I think people do separate those issues. I think what it does, and what Democrats in particular are interested in, is drive turnout.
Yeah.
So abortion becomes a mobilising issue, as we said, for particular demographics, particularly for young women. So they're more likely, perhaps, when abortion is on the ballot to turn out and then vote in a presidential election as well. So it can have that kind of unintended. It's not unintended. It's very much intended. It can have that consequence as well, but it's not necessarily an indicator of the way a state is going to fall in a presidential election.
Sure. Do you have anything else in this area?
Unless you want to talk about Johnny
McEntee. Yeah, go for it. It's all right. Talk about Johnny.
So we had this moment where Johnny, who was, of course, the head of White House personnel for the last year of the Trump administration, and then became a senior advisor to Project 2025. So we know who this guy is. Posted this video on Instagram and TikTok after the debate, kind of being like, "Show me these women who bled out in car parks. Find them for me." And of course, there were lots of women who responded. So he got, is it outdated now to say he got ratioed?
I think you can still say that, yeah.
That's still a thing? Okay.
Yeah, it's still a thing, I think. I mean, as if I'd know. I'm in my mid-40s. But it's still a thing in my world.
Great, me too. So he got ratioed by women kind of being like, here I am. This happened to me. And it kind of, I think it really added to that framing we were talking about earlier of, it wasn't kind of good or bad women. It was just women talking about the horrendous experiences they'd had because of these abortion bans. And I think it did, because of who it was and because this guy is an advisor to Project 2025, it did really kind of highlight the callousness, I suppose, of that project. And, I think as much as some of the stuff around Project 2025 is, I don't know if it's kind of overblown or a scare campaign, because it is pretty scary, but the focus has been pretty relentless. But it is still true that, the introduction to Project 2025 to their mandate for leadership says that the Dobbs decision for the overturning of Roe v. Wade is just the beginning. Like it's that ominous. And Johnny really, I think, helped to highlight that as he was being ratioed.
I have an example right here.
Can someone track down the women Kamala Harris says are bleeding out in parts?
Present. I'm right here. I had a 19-day miscarriage in Idaho because of the abortion regulations. I was turned away not from one ER, but 2 ERs. Technically 3, because I walked into one and they said they wouldn't help me, and I had to walk out. On day 8, I went to the 3rd official ER that I got checked into, and I never did receive a DNC. They gave me 1 dose of pain medicine in 19 days. I continued to suffer exponentially for the next 11 days. I blacked out in my hallway due to blood loss. I stopped eating, so my daughter stopped eating. So I had to eat with tears running down my face because it was actually painful to eat because I was in so much pain. Everything hurt. But my daughter needed to eat, so I was not about to make her not eat because I wasn't eating. I developed a heart condition called AFib. It means my heart doesn't work right anymore. And it fucks up. So if I get too excited, too hot, too much in pain, too traumatized, if somebody yells at me too much, my heart fucks up. And so I have to regulate for my heart to keep active, otherwise I could have a heart attack and die. I have to deal with these side effects for the rest of my life because of abortion laws.
So that was Carmen Brosda there, putting little Johnny in his place. I actually think, I agree with you completely that this is massive backfire, because not only does he get ratioed, but also the argument that these guys would put out there is that the Johnny McEntee types is that these are isolated cases, if any, and he, with his video, produces a lightning rod to attract cases. like you just, if you want to know if there's 100 cases out there, just go to Johnny McEntee's replies, and then you'll find them all there. So it's that's performing a public service, just a public debunking of his own arguments. That's very nice. Thank you, Johnny. That's
Very useful.
worked out very well. While we're on this topic, we might as well just move on to IVF, which is obviously related. There's been a lot of IVF bill action in the last couple of weeks. So can you talk us through that? I must admit, I don't know the ins and outs of these bills very much, but
I can try, because I discovered that there are actually 4 bills.
Oh, okay.
At least. So there's been kind of 2 in focus, but there's a number of them. So basically these are the bills that have come out. So there was that IVF ban in Alabama back in February, and these bills have come before Congress in order to protect right to IVF. So Democrats brought them to specifically, Senator Tammy Duckworth has introduced what she's called the Right to IVF bill into the Senate, which would, as I understand it, give a statutory, so like a legal right to IVF treatments, a federal legal right that the Justice Department could then enforce. So people seeking treatment, if they didn't have access to it, would have a legal recourse. It would also extend IVF access to service people, which of course is close to Tammy Duckworth's heart, because she both served and had 2 children via IVF. And it also requires insurers to cover treatment. So the argument that they make is that it would make IVF more affordable. Specifically, Duckworth's summary says that it would lower IVF costs for middle-class families. So they're very much on message.
Yes.
I think that's a bit obviously I don't know the details of this, but I don't know that mandating insurance coverage necessarily makes treatment more affordable. I don't think that's always the way the American insurance system works, but we can leave that for now. Sorry. So this bill has been introduced in the Senate and blocked by Senate Republicans twice.
Yeah.
The last time just last week. This is despite the fact, of course, that Republicans say that they are in favour of access to IVF.
Yeah, I think Collins and Murkowski voted for it. Yeah, they're the only ones.
Right. Yeah, our friends.
Yeah.
Collins and Murkowski are back. Yeah. Yes, so they were the only Republicans who voted in favour. It only got it 51 to 44, and it needed a 60-vote majority to get past the filibuster. So zero chance of.
Can I just ask quickly? You were saying that it was ensuring that that private insurers would cover IVF, but what about Medicaid and stuff? Like, was it covering the poor being able to get IVF as well, or not?
I'd have to go back and check, Chaz. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm not sure. I know that. So there was a rival bill that Ted Cruz and his friend Katie Britt, the senator from Alaska, had that tied Medicaid funding to access to IVF. So it would basically deny a state Medicaid funding if they had banned IVF. So it was a kind of more like double negative framing, I suppose.
Gotcha.
Which Cruz wanted the Senate to pass by unanimous consent, so just by kind of a voice vote, and he was blocked on procedure. So they're having this kind of fight about, well, you say you care about IVF, so pass my bill. No, you say you care about IVF, pass my bill. The difference between them, as I understand it, is that the Democratic bills include this statutory legal right to IVF, and the rival Republican bills are not including that legal right, and they're not saying anything quite deliberately. That means they're not saying anything about fetal personhood. So they're kind of skating around the central issue, which is exactly what happened in Alabama, where, there was this ruling about essentially fetal personhood, and that was got around by the State House by kind of indemnifying providers from criminal and civil liability. So they didn't actually deal with that central issue. So that seems to be what the fight is over, in addition, of course, to all the politicking around it.
Well, I was going to say, presumably also the Republican bill, I think it's the IVF Protection Act that was called, the Republican bill presumably doesn't provide any funding for IVF either, whereas the Democrat bill has guaranteed insurance, yeah?
Yes.
That'll be a key difference as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Rick Scott had another alternative bill that he called the Increasing Value for Families, IVF, Increasing Value for Families with HSAs Act. See what he did there? Which would expand health savings accounts, like tax-free health savings accounts, so that people would save up to have IVF. But of course, doesn't say anything about fetal personhood or actually protecting, including a statutory right to access. So they're doing all this kind of stupid shit fighting about it.
Just to be clear to the Peppers listening to this, when we're talking health savings accounts, that means you pay for it. It's like a tax preferential account. So you're paying for it, but you get some tax break when you pay for it. Essentially, if it's a health savings account, that's what we're talking about there. Also, just one thing, I haven't read an awful lot about this. So other people might have said this, but I haven't seen people. The little I've read, I haven't seen this mentioned much. The argument that the IVF Protection Act, the Ted Cruz bill, has the thing about you can't get Medicaid funding if you try and impede IVF access. I'm pretty sure, I didn't prepare this, so I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is literally the exact same argument that Obamacare originally ran with and the Supreme Court ruled illegal. The reason why Obamacare is so weird with the Medicaid expansion, that some states have Medicaid expansion and some states don't, is originally in the law, they made it so that every state, if they didn't expand Medicaid, they couldn't get any Medicaid. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can give them a bit of extra Medicaid if you want as an option, but if they don't take it, you can't punish them. And so that's why some states just haven't bothered. And so you have this weird patchwork. It's because, they tried this argument in the past. So I'm pretty sure, unless I've got this totally wrong, that Ted Cruz, of all people, would know that his bill would be struck down by the Supreme Court.
Are you suggesting that Senator Ted Cruz is not acting in good faith?
Look, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. So, yeah. One other question for you. Sorry I interrupted. You might have more to go on this, but what you just described as the Democratic bill sounds very much to me, the one that the Republicans just blocked, apart from Murkowski and Collins, sounds very much to me like Trump's policy. Isn't Trump's policy to either have the government pay for IVF or more likely get insurance companies to pay for it? That's what the Democratic bill does. So have people, it strikes me as an open seeping wound, the fact that Trump's actual policy is the Democratic bill.
It is exactly the Democratic bill. And the Democrats have been saying that, Elizabeth Warren and Tammy Duckworth have both been saying, here's Trump's policy. Yeah. You said this is what you want, now vote for it. And of course they won't, Republicans are just saying it's a show vote. We're not going to engage in this kind of politics. And I think for some of them, it is that kind of classic clash between their, undying loyalty to Trump and their actual kind of underlying ideology, which of course would be against any kind of mandate to insurance companies to cover a particular procedure. That goes against the kind of market rules fundamentalism of traditional Republican conservatism. So it's that, classic bind that Republicans find themselves in. And, I don't think it would do them any favors with Trump anyway to support a Democratic bill, even if it's his policy, because, that's the way Trump operates. And also, like, he quite clearly just made up this policy on the fly because he was getting pushback, as he does.
Yes, yeah. So, given I've interrupted you many times, did you have more to say about the IVF stuff?
Oh, good. No, I think, I think I'd say, like, I'm sure you've said this before, but kind of how ridiculous it is when IVF is so popular that, they're letting this wound, Republicans are letting this wound fester. But it's just I guess another marker of how far to the right the party has lurched, in that it does actually have influential people in it who are so far down the fetal personhood line that they have this objection to IVF. Like, we're talking that level of extremism. I think it's just, it's another kind of important reminder of the kind of actors that are now having influence in that party.
I'll tell you what strikes me about this, and that is that, look, I mean, I get we're in the middle of an election campaign and all the rest of it, but I feel like people are completely missing the issue when it comes to IVF access. And that is, I mean, IVF obviously cost a lot, but I take your point about the fetal personhood thing. I think it'd be unlikely for any national bill to impinge on IVF anytime soon. Not that, I mean, they can't do anything in Congress, let alone something like this. But there is, I think, a much bigger issue, which I'm not hearing anyone even speak about, let alone actually address. And that is that demand is outstripping supply already. And anything that Trump's talking about or these guys are talking about is going to make it infinitely worse. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. A decade ago, it was 1 out of every 65 babies born in America was conceived through IVF. 2022, it was 1 out of every 40 babies born in America was conceived through IVF. That's improving. That number is going up, but that's still only 2.5% of babies, right? 11% of women, 9% of men of childbearing age are infertile or have infertility issues. So what that's telling me is that there's at least 4 times as much demand out there than is being supplied at the moment, at least. Yeah. I've even mentioned LGBTQ people who presumably are going to be using IVF as well for their babies. So we're talking probably 6-7 times more demand out there than supply right now, before we do anything, right? Also, there are very few fertility clinics in poor and regional areas right now. I saw the most amazing stat the other day, which I just had to check up on because I just thought this can't be true. And I've set this up like this just to prove my point. I'm going to get you to guess, even after I've set this up like this. Take a guess. What percentage of fertility clinics are in New York City? What percentage of American fertility clinics are in New York City? Take a guess. And I've set up the way I just set it up as well. I could have tried to trick you, but no.
So it's going to be high.
Yeah.
And there's going to be heaps in LA as well. Geez, I don't know. Is it like 50?
Okay, so I set it up like this. You went for 50%. The answer is 80%. 80% of fertility. I see. I was that confident you weren't going to go that high because it makes no sense. You go, how is that possible? The 80% of fertility clinics 30% of fertility clinics in America are on Manhattan Island alone. Wow. It's just, but 80% are in New York City. I guess New York City is the richest place by a long way, and also full of older people who put off having kids for a long time. I mean, I thought LA as well would be pretty prominent in that respect. But
yeah, anyway, that was what I thought.
Yeah, I would have thought that, but 80% it is. I can't look. I have no explanations. Maybe the Peppers might have some comments about it for correspondence, but I'm telling you, I when I saw that, I thought, well, that can't be true. So then I followed the link, and I followed the link, and I followed the link, and yeah. it checks out. It's maybe they have lots of little fertility clinics rather than big fertility clinics elsewhere. I don't know, but just in terms of the number of fertility clinics, 80% of them are in New York City. But what this means is if you don't have so many in rural areas and you have them all in New York, that adds the lack of supply as well, and which is also placing upward pressure on prices, which is why IVF costs between $15,000 and $30,000 a cycle, and you need 2.5 cycles on average to get pregnant. That's a lot of money. And if any of these solutions are enacted, you're going to increase the demand. You know what's going to happen? Prices are going to go up. That's what's going to happen. And one more thing about supply. Demand through the roof, not so much supply. One of the problems as well is doctors, fertility doctors. This is another one I could play guessing game with you on, or I won't. I'll just tell you because this is also amazing, this one. I want you, okay, I won't put you through the guessing game, but everyone, all peppers, think for yourself how many fertility doctors you think graduate per year in America, in the entirety of America. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just tell you that fertility doctors generally go through 4 years of medical school, plus 4 years of residency, plus 3 years of fellowship in reproductive and endocrinology. So that's 11 years of expensive training. And at the end of that, then they're qualified. So I don't know what number you got in your head of how many you think go through that process per year. I'll tell you the answer, 45. There are 45 fertility doctors in America per year.
That's like one per state.
Yeah. So once again, not much supply. If I'm in Congress and I'm trying to actually create a better situation for people, I'll be focusing on supply. That's what I'd be focusing on. And then, yeah, sure. I'm not saying you don't subsidize it. I'm not saying you don't help poor people get it. I'm just saying that forget the money bags for a second. Let's focus on supply because that's actually the biggest problem. And anyway, that's my rant about IVF.
Okay.
Thanks. You got anything else on that, or are we moving on? Okay, I want to pick up because an hour spent on the Haitians last week wasn't enough. So I want to spend a little bit more time on that, on the stuff which I didn't get a chance to talk about. First of all, I mentioned, I referred to Aurora a couple of times, Aurora, Colorado last week. And I didn't go into any detail, but I just want to quickly, this won't take long. I want to quickly give you some context for why Trump is so desperate for success in Springfield. The reason is because his first attempt was in Aurora, Colorado. This is a few weeks back. There were reports about a Venezuelan gang, Tren Aragua, taking over apartment buildings. And Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman said that there were several buildings that had, quote, fallen to these Venezuelan gangs. They'd completely taken them over. Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, she had a lot to say about it, and as well. And then this video was released, which you can see there, of these dudes walking through a doorway with high-powered rifles, looking all very gang-like. Now, that's I don't know what that shows exactly. They're guys with guns. Yeah, okay, cool. But I don't know if a crime's been committed. I don't know what's going on there. But to be clear, the gang does exist in Aurora. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in Aurora, but the whole taking over buildings thing seemed a little bit sus, right? My man, Jared Polis, my favorite governor, the governor of Colorado, he didn't have a lot of time for the reports. He said that they were ready to act if the police needed help, but, quote, according to police intelligence, this purported invasion is largely a feature of Danielle Jurinsky's imagination. Good on you, Jared. Anyway, Trump wanted a piece of this, and so this is what he said.
A group from Venezuela, rough ones, they took over large sections of a town, large sections of an area of Colorado. Aurora. Has anyone been there? I think you'd better stay away for a little while. They had AK-47s, the ultimate guns, AK-47s. They can blow lots of people away real fast. And the sheriff didn't want to touch him. Nobody wants to touch him. Sheriff, there's 18 Venezuelans attacking my building. Would you please come over and straighten out the situation? He's got a deputy. You know what they say? Well, no thanks. Let's call in the military. They're taking over.
But it didn't really work out for Trump when journalists showed up to these apartments only to find that the residents didn't care about Trinidad Aragua at all. They actually feared the managers of the complex a lot more. They said that they were slumlords, and that the managers were called CBZ Management, and their apartments often had no heat or running water. They were plagued by pests and mold, and it got to and actually the buildings were so bad. It turned out that they'd just been talking about condemning the buildings, and it was then that the owners of the buildings were the ones spreading the rumors about Trinidad Aragua taking over, possibly as a distraction. If that was their aim, it didn't work because the buildings were condemned days later. But the police, I mean, for a start, it was a complete nuisance to Trump that the residents were actually holding press conferences saying, yeah, we don't care about Trinidad Aragua at all. So that wasn't helping him much, the whole scare campaign. But then, even worse, the police said they identified 10 members of Trinidad Aragua in the entirety of Aurora, and they arrested 9 of them. So, problem over, right? Which is not what Trump wanted. He wanted to scare people. He didn't want the threat to be neutralized. That's the last thing he wanted. By the way, if that's true, there's 10 members of this gang in Aurora. Aurora's got 400,000 people. So I think it's pretty clear that these 10 gang members didn't take over the entirety of Aurora, as was implied. But anyway, my point is it completely collapsed in a heap. And Trump still refers to Aurora every now and then, but his heart isn't in it. And he knows that no one's scared about the Venezuelan gang members who are in jail now. And that's why he needed the Springfield story so much, and it was fortuitous that it came just on the day that the Aurora story just collapsed in a heap. So that's why I think he seized it so enthusiastically. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing, I want to fill in a couple of gaps that I left last week. I know it's hard to believe given I spoke for an hour, but I really was rushing towards the end there. First of all, with the city commission meetings, I told you that I went back and I couldn't find any mention of Haitians in the past. I went back to May. I couldn't find any mention. I didn't go back far enough because in March, someone else found in a meeting, there's a guy called Mark Sanders, who's kind of the leader of the Haitian Skeptics Club, so to speak. He turns up on Fox News all the time. He was the first person to turn up in the meeting and say that he'd heard rumors of Haitians doing awful things to the local animals. He didn't go into details what it was, but he said he hadn't seen any proof of it, but he'd heard the rumors. And that was back in March. And I bring that up only to say that was before the Nazis came to Springfield. So the suggestion the Nazis came up with this, I don't think is true. The Nazis may have been the megaphone for it online. They might have amplified it online, and I think they did. But I just want to be fair here. I don't think the Nazis came up with the original idea because at least someone was spreading rumors in March about that. This one's a beauty. I saw a map of how Haitians are spread across America. I didn't see this until after the podcast. So I want to show you all this map for a very important reason. Okay, so what you can see there is the spread of Haitians across America. And what you can see is basically a whole bunch of grey, not many Haitians anywhere, except for in Florida, where they all are. They're all in Florida. That's where the Haitians are. And that the reason why that's interesting is because if Haitians eat cats and eat dogs, don't worry, Springfield, look at Florida. Where are all the cat eating and dog eating stories in Florida? Because that's where all the Haitians are. And I can tell you, once again, I want to be honest with you, there is one. I saw one, ironically, in a place called Springfield in Florida. But, I don't know if it was a Haitian, but someone ate a cat in Springfield like 2 years ago. That's I know that because someone was spreading that around as misinformation online suggesting it was this Springfield here. And no one bothered to go and check which Springfield it was, because I know there's a lot of Springfields. So I went back and because of course they didn't have the links. They just had just a little bit of a news report. And I go, okay, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. So I looked it up and yeah, sure enough, it's not even our Springfield. It's Springfield in Florida. But there's one. That's one cat eating incident. Where are the rest? There should be thousands of cat and dog eating incidents in Florida if Haitians eat cats and dogs, because that's where all the Haitians are. Literally hundreds of thousands of them down in Florida. So where's all the cat eating and dog eating? It's not there. So I think that's an important point to make. Another thing was I referred in passing to the fact that some people try and scare up the voodoo idea with Haitians because, well, actually, you should call it Vodou, not voodoo, because it's actually slightly different in Haiti than in other places. It's Vodou. It's different. But I got correspondence from Routh, who said it seems that Haitian voodoo doesn't have a ton of Disney-esque evil-sounding rituals. Even the animal sacrifice is a lot more tame than it sounds. And he linked to a video, which is one of the most academic, just beautiful, crystal clear descriptions of a religion you could possibly see. I'm going to put it in the homework. Have a look under the blurb of the videos if you're interested at all in the religions and the way Vodou interacts with Catholicism, which a lot of them are. Like I said, they're mostly Christian, but the Catholicism has a tinge of this Vodou. You can see how they interact with each other in this video. It's really interesting, and it's not at all scary, and it doesn't involve eating cats. So so if you want to know the truth about it, go have a look at that video. I thought that was really good. But the main thing I want to spend time on now is about the numbers. Like I said, I had a whole section on this. At the top of every PEP, I talk about how this is for the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. And you might just think that's just a little catchphrase. And yeah, maybe it is. But every now and then it's absolutely true. And this is one of those times, because I prepared this section for TV. And every single person in the team begged me to take it on, to not run it on air, including John. Every single one of them just said, no, this is confusing. This is underwhelming. This doesn't work at all. Please don't ruin our TV show by putting this on air. And I had a shorter version of it too. It was snappier, but no, they didn't like it at all. So I said, okay, fine. I'll bow to not just the majority, but the unanimity against this. And that's a great tease for you guys now. You must be very excited. I'm about to share it with you.
I'm excited.
Get on the edge of your seat, folks. Anyway, the number of Haitians that gets thrown around is generally 20,000. That's the number you hear over and over again in Springfield. According to the New York Times, there's been an estimated range of between 12 and 20,000 Haitians, they said. And they say they know that from the data from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, as well as the public schools, the healthcare providers in the area, and social service agencies. But a year ago, the Springfield local paper said that the official estimates were actually between 4,000 and 8,000. That was only a year ago. So have they had 12 to 16,000 Haitians come over in the last year? Sounds sus. And they're also, if you look at the City of Springfield website, even now, right now, it says that there are between 12 and 15,000 migrants in Clark County. Now, that's important because Clark County has twice as many people as Springfield. Migrants is not just Haitians. It's everyone. So that's decidedly less than 20,000 Haitians. People haven't really hit on that yet. But there's a contradiction there between the official government numbers in Springfield and what everyone's saying. And it just so happens, you might go, well, the website's out of date, isn't it? But it just so happens to match exactly what the mayor said in his press conference 2 weeks ago.
We have realistically been saying 12 to 15,000 immigrants is what we have counted through the health department and other agencies that we work with.
12 to 15,000 migrants is what they're saying now. But people are still saying 20,000 anyway. All right. how does this work? First, let's look at the census numbers, because there is a little community out there. There's a little community of nerds out in the internet that's quite obsessed with this question, and they've been crawling around the census for a while. So let's have a look at some of these numbers. According to the 2023 census figures, the town's population keeps dropping at about 58,000, even in 2023, despite all these migrants. According to the census, in 2023, the non-native population in Springfield was less than 2,000 in total. That was 2022. In 2022, it was less than 2,000 in total, which is, once again, that's less than you'd expect. What about Clark County? Maybe they don't live in Springfield. Maybe they live in Clark County, around Springfield, and they travel into work. Well, Clark County's population has stayed still over the last 4 years. It was 134,083 in 2019, and it's 134,610 in 2023. The black population in Clark County has fallen in the last 4 years, from 12,025 in 2019 to 8,840 in 2023. The West Indian population in Clark County has risen from 7 in 2019 to 1135 in 2023. So that's 1,000 it's gone up. The foreign-born population in Clark County has risen from 2,275 in 2019 to 3,459 in 2023. So that's something. Talking like just over 1,000 though in 4 years. Where are these Haitians? Even more so, according to the 2023 census, there were only 5,264 Haitians in the entirety of Ohio. And there's a margin of error there of 2,500. So give or take somewhere between 8,000 and 3,000 Haitians in Ohio in 2023. Now, these numbers have to be wrong. Surely there is more than a few thousand Haitians. I mean, they're like, people can see with their own eyes there's more than a few thousand Haitians. Like, this can't be a figment of everyone's imagination, surely. Maybe. I mean, according to the Census Bureau, there are 3 kinds of people that are hard to survey. 1, people who are mobile, may not have a fixed address. 2, people who may face language or technological barriers. 3, people who are suspicious of the government and have low levels of social trust. These guys might be the trifecta, okay? So maybe they're really hard to survey. Maybe also a lot of them came over in 2024. All these numbers are up to 2023, I just cited, some in 2022. Okay, so let's leave the census for a second then, because maybe just the census is wrong. This is, by the way, I should say all the data truthers out there are all going on the census going, oh my God, there are no Haitians in Springfield. They're none. And I just don't believe that. There are obviously some, right? But before you leave a census, I just want to just say one thing I just found incidentally, which I thought was really interesting from the census. You know how we've heard how housing's overwhelmed and people can't afford their rents anymore? The vacancy rate in Clark County, according to the census, has fallen 1.5 percentage points from 2019 to 2023. So, which means there's less vacant apartments, but only just. Clark County's median rent grew 6% between 2019 and 2023. Sounds like a lot until you realise the national median rent went up 28% over the same period. People aren't getting priced out, at least according to the census. And rent-burdened households, which are households that spend 35% or more of their income on rent, fell in the last 4 years. Maybe the census is wrong. Just telling you, I saw it there and thought, ooh, that's interesting. Okay, are there any other figures out there we can lean on? Let's leave the census aside. How about employment figures? They're usually pretty accurate and up to date as well. This graph you're looking at now is just for Springfield town. Maybe an extra 1,000 or 2,000 workers in the last 4 years. Maybe. What if they're living outside Springfield City? Okay, this is the Springfield metropolitan area. No, not quite Clark County, but it's a bigger area. Once again, there's not a lot more. Okay, here's another different area that's slightly greater than Springfield as well. Once again, it's going up a bit. Not much, 2,000 people. Where are all these workers from? Because the workers, they can't hide from employment figures. So, because you're surveying the bosses. So where are they? How about we look at financial assistance figures? They should be up to date. If you need financial assistance, you're there, right?
So in the county, we have roughly 51,000 Medicaid recipients in Clark County. 6,590 of those are non-citizens. Of those who are non-citizens, 5,059, or 77%, have Haiti identified as their country of origin, and 5,587, or roughly 85%, have Haitian Creole identified as their language. We also looked at the whole state fiscal year 2024 of the roughly 56,000 unique recipients of aid in Clark County in the year. 10,297 were non-citizens. And of those non-citizens, about 77% identified as Haiti as their country of origin. So that gives you some real numbers to work with, although obviously not every person who's here is seeking aid through those channels or any aid at all.
Just for those who that washed over them, 51,000 Medicaid recipients in Clark County, 6,590 are non-citizens, 5,059 of them have Haiti identified as their country of origin. 5,059 in Clark County. 5,587 have Haitian Creole identified as their language in Clark County. So there's about between 5,000 and 6,000 Haitians in Clark County getting financial assistance. In fiscal year 2024, 56,000 unique recipients of aid in Clark County, 10,297 were non-citizens. About 77% identified Haiti as their country of origin. So we're talking about 8,000 Haitians getting aid in Clark County, which, remember, has twice the population of Springfield. For the record, I asked St. Vincent de Paul in Springfield what they thought the number of Haitians were. And they said they could confirm 8,000 Haitians that social services had contact with in some capacity. They also said that some Haitians don't require social services, so their guess is somewhere just over 12,000 in total. They said 12,000, 13,000, 14,000. That's for Clark County. Okay, so those numbers match up. What St. Vincent de Paul said and what the lady said, 8,000. So now we're getting somewhere. That sounds like a more realistic number than 1,000 or 2,000. But it's Clark County. Having said that, I think we can assume that almost every Haitian in Clark County is in Springfield. All right. How about school enrollment? School enrollments, we've heard their kids are flooding the schools, haven't we? Enrollments this year in Springfield City School District was 7,415. In 2019, it was 7,551. Enrollments have dropped slightly. There are 927 pupils in the Springfield City School District who are considered to be English learners. So let's assume they're all Haitians, every single one of them. Okay, 927. According to the Migration Policy Institute, 7% of Haitian immigrants to America are under the age of 18 on average, which is a lot less than Americans, obviously. It's 24% of Americans are under 18. Using that 7% proportion, just as a rule of thumb, you end up with about 10,000 Haitians if they've got 927 of them in the schools. So once again, the numbers are all starting to coalesce around the 10,000 mark, I'd say. So look, the real number of Haitians, we don't know exactly. A rough calculation could be if you take the county's current immigrant estimate, which is 12 to 15,000. That's what they say on their website and what the mayor says. And you subtract the foreign-born population in the county before the Haitians arrived 4 years ago, and they were about 3,000, 2 to 3,000. You end up with 10 to 12,000. So that's what I reckon is pretty much the number. It's a shitload less than 20,000, and it's even more or less than 30,000, which is what that Mark Sanders character says, and 32,000, which is what Trump says. So it's basically half of what everyone's saying is the number of Haitians. So I just want to just put that out there. I don't know if you find that underwhelming or if you find that confusing, but I found it interesting, so I wanted to share it with all you guys. Do you have any thoughts about any of this?
Look, I was very convinced, Chaz. I think it's, it's surprising that it is that much lower than the numbers that they've been throwing out, but it's also entirely consistent with those kind of scare tactics. Like, that's the whole point. Nobody's acting in good faith or cares that their numbers are wrong, because that's not the point. But that doesn't mean it's not important to point out when they're wrong and when they're lying.
Yeah, totally. And look, and I think there also might be an element of confusion as well. Like the difference in Clark County and Springfield, I made a big deal out of that. Most people don't seem to make a big deal about that at all. They just mix up Clark County and Springfield stats all the time, when one's twice the size of the other. So and also confusing immigrants with Haitians, I think, is also something that people do a lot. So there might be a bit of genuine confusion as well. Not everyone is a maths nerd. So, before we go off this topic, though, that's all I had to say. Sorry. Before I even do this, what do you have to say? Do you have anything to say about the Haitians thing? It's such a big topic, and I've just been rattling on. I haven't asked you your thoughts at all. Do you have any thoughts you want to share about this?
No, I think you've covered it so well, Chaz. I did want to ask you whether you think Trump is going to go, because he was threatening to go to Springfield and do an event, and I haven't seen any updates. Do you think he would do that? Like, that would be a disaster for the town.
Yeah, the town would definitely not like that. I think that... So here's the thing. If he's going to that town, he's intending to go to war with the mayor, because the mayor has already told him not to come. The mayor's a Republican. He's told them not to come. The city manager is a Republican. He's told them not to come. The governor is a Republican, and a very popular Republican in a state which Trump would not be wanting to risk the Senate seat here. He's taking a risk. If he chooses to go to war with popular Republicans, I think that would be a mistake. I think that would be an act of desperation. I think that I wouldn't rule out him doing it, because sometimes he has crazy things, but I don't think he's going to turn up unless he intends to go full Joker. You know, unless he literally intends to set the place alight, metaphorically. I don't know. I don't think he'll go otherwise, because I think there's no way he's going to placate them and to reach out a hand of understanding. That's not going to be happening. If he's going to take on the mayor, and that would be an interesting. That would be what they call, let's say, a bold choice. Cotton, it'd be one of them. So yeah, I don't want to make any predictions, but I'd be surprised. I think that would be an interesting strategy, I'd say. Before we go off the Haitian situation, though, I mentioned Christopher Rufo last week as the guy who had a bounty of $5,000 for this, and ended up seeing around this weird video, which is allegedly someone barbecuing a cat. I want to say a word.
Too much barbecuing animals talk in this campaign.
Yeah,
really
there really has been. Any barbecuing animals is too much. I want to say another word about Christopher Rufo, though, just because of this week's news. He just popped up, and that was that conservative. He's a conservative activist, great mate of Ron DeSantis, right? Lauren Windsor, who kind of hunts conservative activists. She's a lefty she's the person who goes around taping right-wingers undercover. Like, she's the one who taped Alito and Alito's wife and Roberts' wife a few months back. That's Lauren Windsor. She found Christopher Rufo's name on Ashley Madison the other day, and she made a bit of a thing out of it. And now he's threatening to sue her. And I just want to know a couple of things about this. You might not even noticed this story, but if you had, I just wanted to just point out a couple of things which I think haven't been really expressed very well. The first thing is that Christopher Rufo seems to have deleted an innocent-looking tweet that says he lived in Topanga for 5 years. He just deleted it now. And that's of interest because the raw data of the profile on Ashley Madison that is linked to Christopher Rufo's address suggests the location of the account was in Topanga. And so the fact that he deleted that tweet, that seemingly innocuous tweet, is a very strong piece of evidence that despite his denials, he actually was on Ashley Madison, I would suggest. But, and I'm not doing this for legal reasons, I'm doing this for fair reasons. Ashley Madison is not just a cheating website. It's largely a cheating website, but single people get on it as well. And the reason I'm putting that there is not because I have some candle for Christopher Rufo, but because he started his account, he allegedly started his account in 2014. He met his wife in 2015. He got married in 2016. So I could believe that he was not cheating on anyone at any point in time. He was maybe picking up wives, but he wasn't, which now is his own problem. But just Lauren Winslow is running a few tweets about, oh, look at him cheating on the mother of his children, kind of a thing, it's entirely conceivable that he never used it for cheating. And maybe, he's had the account allegedly for 10 years. He might have cheated on her since, but he started the account before he knew her. And I think that's important to point out. But he's definitely hiding something. That Topanga thing, he's definitely hiding something. Whatever it is, there's something he doesn't want you to know. So we'll just leave it at that. While we're talking about dodgy characters, I know you got a bit to say about this is now a week and a half old. As I said, it's a bonus PEP. We're sweeping up the debris of the last few weeks. The most debris-like debris of the last few weeks, I think, is Laura Loomer. So go for it.
It's Timu Melania time. So Laura Loomer has, or she kind of came into the news cycle around the debate, Chaz, and you'll remember, she was on the plane with Trump to Pennsylvania for the debate, and the argument goes that it was in fact her amplifying the Haitian pet eating thing on Twitter. She's got like 1.2 or 1.3 million followers on Twitter. That's what Trump picked up, and that's why he mentioned it in the debate, and that's why we're in this ridiculous situation that we're in. So there's been all this attention on Loomer because she's been spending all this time with Trump, but she's been around like a lot of these kind of far-right influencer types for a lot longer than that. She's started out with Project Veritas in 2015 in Florida, doing their kind of like sting videos where they tried to trap professors into saying that they supported ISIS and got into a fair bit of trouble around that. He did some work with Alex Jones on InfoWars as well. So, exactly what you think with a person with that kind of CV is. But she didn't, her kind of, I suppose her star rose in that far-right universe a couple of years later in 2017 when her and Jack Posobiec stormed the stage of a production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar in, I think it was in Central Park.
Yes, it was.
New York, yeah. Because it's 2017, so it's, mid-Trump years. Yep. They'd redressed Caesar as Trump, like they'd cast Caesar in a Trump figure, and of course he gets, bloodily murdered at the end. So they storm the stage and start yelling things like, stop the normalization of political violence, this is violence against Donald Trump. No one really cares. Like, she gets booed off the stage and arrested. But then, of course, like a lot of these figures, she scores an interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News. And so all of a sudden she's everywhere in that universe. And I think that's kind of where she came to Trump's attention on Fox News, would you believe? So she's kind of integrated into the universe. She gets close to Don Jr. She's close to Roger Stone. Trump really, really likes her. And she keeps going and being exactly the same person, who worked for InfoWars, did work for InfoWars. In 2018, she went after the Parkland kids, suggesting that they were plants. She was then banned from Twitter for some pretty revolting Islamophobic stuff, particularly aimed at Ilhan Omar, who'd just been elected to Congress.
That's right. Yeah, she said that Ilhan Omar was into female genital mutilation because she's Muslim.
Yep, that's right.
Charming, yes.
Lovely. And then, so she kicked off Twitter, those are the days, and handcuffs herself to Twitter headquarters.
Yes. Oh, sorry, let me interrupt you there because I've got a clip of her talking about her being handcuffed to Twitter headquarters. Oh, by the way, you might have been about to say this, but the funniest thing about her handcuffing herself to Twitter headquarters is that they had double doors and she handcuffed herself to one door. So everyone was just walking in and out past her without any problems whatsoever. And she's just sitting there pathetically trying to get in the way, but she's failing. It was so futile. But yeah, she had a yellow Star of David on her while she was handcuffed. She is Jewish and she's quite fond of drawing Holocaust analogies. And I have a clip of her talking about it with one hell of a Holocaust analogy. Here you go.
Well, I had this idea because we all know that the favored tactic of communists and Nazis is censorship, of course. And when I handcuffed myself to Twitter, as you know, Jason, I wore a yellow star because I really do believe that what we're seeing right now, it's massive digital extermination, which is a precursor to actual extermination. And I do believe that history is going to repeat itself and we're going to find ourselves with concentration camps again. And we are living in a digital gulag. And just like gulag prisoners and prisoners in concentration camps had to have tattoos, right? The Nazi style Holocaust tattoos. I thought that it would be really symbolic to actually get my docket number tattooed on my wrist, like a Holocaust style tattoo. Because I really do believe that that history is repeating itself, and we are witnessing a digital Shoah, and this is digital extermination by these actual fascists and tyrants in Silicon Valley. And so I might just get my docket number tattooed on my wrist.
Just to be clear, this is all because she was banned from Twitter. Yeah. When the Christchurch massacre happened, you might be able to say this, but when the Christchurch massacre happened, her famous quote was, "Nobody cares about Christchurch. I especially don't. I care about my social media accounts and the fact that Americans have been silenced more than Christchurch." She doesn't have a lot of perspective, does Laura Loomer.
Anyway, well, I mean, it's hard to have perspective when you're in the digital gulag.
Yes.
So, but she's at this stage, she's a joke on the right as well. Like nobody's taking her seriously because she's so embarrassing. But that starts to change, like fairly quickly, really. Like, so she runs for a congressional seat in Florida in 2020. She wins the primary there. And again, just to give you a flavour of the kind of people she's hanging around with, Gavin McInnes, the founder of the Proud Boys, is that her victory party. So is Roger Stone, her longtime friend. Trump supported her campaign. Of course, it was in his district in Florida, but she lost terribly to a Democrat. It was an embarrassing loss. And then she ran again for a different seat in Florida in 2020, but didn't even win the primary, right? So some of the stuff I read was really perplexed, being like, Trump hates losers. Doesn't he hate losers? Why is he hanging out with this person?
Yeah.
But he's still full of praise for her. And then she's back on Twitter in 2022. Elon Musk welcomes her back. And then by April 2023, Trump is calling her a woman with courage. And the New York Times is reporting that he wants to hire her to work on the campaign, but doesn't because of internal blowback, which is an ongoing theme, of course, with Loomer. So this keeps going on. There's lots of praise coming from Trump. And then they kind of all of a sudden, it seems, get particularly close. So she's on Trump's plane in January of this year, going to a campaign event in Iowa with him. And that's when she starts tweeting stuff about the January 6th. She's tweeting about January 6th, saying it should be a national holiday, that they're patriots. So she's saying all the stuff Trump wants to hear. And then by the debate, she's on his plane, as we said, to Pennsylvania. And then she goes with him the day after the debate to a 9/11 commemoration ceremony in New York. So she's standing with him.
Yeah.
And lots of analysis has pointed out that she's tweeted stuff and been, saying stuff about as 9/11 conspiracy theories, like suggesting it's an inside job.
Yeah.
So she's ticking all the boxes, like she's finding all the conspiracy theories.
She literally tweeted out the video that as its final frame was 9/11 was an inside job. She wasn't just insinuating it; she just flat out said it. Yeah.
And like that then is kind of extra weird because, like, where's Melania? They're in New York, and famously Melania doesn't want to leave New York. This is in New York, and a very serious somber ceremony. She's not there. She's posting weird videos about her new book on Twitter and her lessons from motherhood.
Yeah.
Whole other thing. And so then there starts to be blowback about why Loomer, especially kind of internally from the Trump campaign, about why she's so close to him, and the influence she's having on him. So with the stuff about Springfield, but then also after the debate, she's doing the conspiracy about the Bluetooth earrings. So suggesting that Kamala Harris was wearing like earpieces in her earrings, which Trump then amplifies. And so we then get to the point where like one NBC article is opening with the line, "No one can keep former President Donald Trump away from Laura Loomer." So it's like she's worm tongue, like she's kind of got her claws into him, and it's really like some of the coverage is really quite nasty. Like Milo Yiannopoulos used to be her intern, and they've had some like fairly spectacular falling out, and he's now tweeting just like I don't think you can even call it innuendo, some pretty graphic stuff about Loomer and Trump. And that's because a couple of weeks ago, or partly because there was a video came out of the two of them of Trump and Loomer at Mar-a-Lago, where he's got his arm around her, which a lot of people ran with.
I've got that video right here. Why don't we join the group who are running with it? There we go.
She's actually...
That's my
softer.
That says Trump 2024.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
That's that. Yes.
So a lot of people ran with this chat. I don't know what you think about it, but I wouldn't want to engage in speculation, but for me, like, that just seems like normal Trump. Like, that's how Trump behaves around even vaguely attractive women. Like, he is the guy whose hand is too high up your waist. So I don't think that video is, reveals as much as people are suggesting it does about their relationship. But like I said, a lot of people have been saying much more graphic things about their relationship. And the insinuation, of course, is that she's trapped him. Like, she's poor Trump. This is, coming from the right. Poor Trump, like, he's so vulnerable to influence, and she's kind of, with her wily ways, is influencing him, making him say ridiculous conspiracy theories and damaging the campaign. Like, it's such a familiar story, of course, with Trump. And a lot of the suggestion is that the campaign is now in crisis because they're all fighting about Loomer and how close she is to Trump. And she's fought back against a lot of that, as she does pretty aggressively, adding in some pretty graphic, horrible stuff, suggestions about how Kamala Harris made it to the top as well.
Yes.
Because we can't. She, I guess, couldn't resist putting that in.
Yes.
And so I don't know about you, Chaz, what you think, but like the suggestion is that because of all of this, and because campaign staff are kind of backgrounding against her, that the Trump campaign is in crisis. But I think that's overblown.
Well, the first thing I'd note is that Loomer's disappeared, like, in the last week. I mean, I know. We really should have talked about this a week and a half ago when it was in the news, but I'm not surprised to have seen her disappear because I mean I think you have shown the appropriate level of cynicism about the whole poor old Trump is under her spell. Trump just wants to run a normal campaign, but she's making him all racist and conspiracy minded. Like obviously, Trump surrounds himself with people who give him what he wants. She gives him exactly what he wants in extremely concentrated doses. She is the most she has the lowest standards when it comes to fighting back. When it comes to fighting back, she is prepared to say or do anything. And it's quite instructive when you have a look at her fighting with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, by the way, people have, I think, incorrectly characterized as saying, "Oh well, Loomer's when you're too crazy for Marjorie Taylor Greene, how crazy is Loomer?" That is not what this is about. This is not a crazy off. They used to be friends. This is a power struggle. That's what's going on here. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene is acting like Loomer's too crazy for her because that is the tactic she's trying to use. But it's entire like their falling out was entirely over Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently was one of the people who advised Trump to not hire Laura Loomer way back when, earlier this year. And that was when Marjorie Taylor Greene was trying to be vice president. And I think she saw Laura Loomer as competition, not to be vice president, but as competition for Trump's favor. And so she didn't want her around. And she wanted to be Trump's number one fan. And Laura Loomer did not take well to that. And I'm going about this a long way because I'm now about to read you their interaction as an example of what I'm talking about, which is what Trump loves about Laura Loomer. Okay, so Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets out, what this was about was Laura Loomer, I'm sure you're about to get to this, tweeted out at one point in time while she was on Trump's plane, if Kamala Harris wins, the White House will smell like curry and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center. What fine humor. Anyway, and Marjorie Taylor Greene responded with, "This is appalling and extremely racist. It does not represent who we are as Republicans or MAGA. This does not represent President Trump. This type of behavior should not be tolerated ever. Laura Loomer should take this down." So, like I said, there's no way she actually thinks that. That's just the position she was taking because it was convenient at that moment. And this is how Laura Loomer responds. Once again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is extremely jealous and vindictive over the fact that she wasn't successful in turning Donald Trump against me, is now behaving like a leftist and accusing me of being racist. Kamala Harris is on video calling herself Indian and saying she cooks with curry. She also refuses to speak to the media, so there is a strong likelihood that she would set up a call center to avoid speaking to the press and being honest with the American people. My God, how bad faith is that explanation? But anyway, hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, speaking of racism, one of your former staffers told me you have a favorite word that starts with N. What if the staffer has a video? It's rather ironic that MTG wants to call me a racist when MTG is a full-blown anti-Semite, in caps, who believes that Jewish people use space lasers to control the world. Along with being anti-Semite, MTG is also a poor excuse for a Christian. Her marriage failed because she couldn't keep her legs closed while she was a new member of Congress and was too busy screwing some guy from her CrossFit. So she went on, but I thought that was enough. That gives you an idea of what Laura Loomer's like. And Trump, that's like manna from heaven from Trump. He loves people who fight dirty, who do total warfare. He loves that. And that's Laura Loomer's whole bag, total warfare. She knows where all the bodies are buried and she will dig up every single one of them. And then they'll dance to Thriller together, her and all the bodies. That's the way Laura Loomer rolls. And Trump loves it. So, yeah, I don't think there was ever any spell. I think Trump was more. I think the only spell was potential spell was on Loomer, not on Trump. Like I don't think Trump. I mean, I'm not going to speculate about whether they're having an affair or not. I really don't care. But if they are, I promise you, Trump doesn't give a stuff about her. Like she's just a piece of tail for him if they are having an affair. Whereas I think if they are having an affair, she's desperately in love with Trump. Like she's
tweeted about how much she loves him.
Yeah. And there's some really disturbing video out there from the convention of her being in the front row screaming at Trump, "I love you."
Yeah. I love you. I love you, President Trump. Amazing speech, guys. I loved it. I'll never give up on you. Amazing. You're amazing. I love you. Best president ever. We love you.
If there's any spell, it's on her, not on him. But she just gives him what he loves. She gives him conspiracies that he can use. He loves, for those who don't remember, I've referred to Laura Loomer once in the past as being the person who supplies him with his stupidest theories. Like Mashan's daughter, his obsession with Judge Mashan's daughter was straight from Laura Loomer. That Kamala Harris is not black, straight from Laura Loomer. Well, there was another one as well. Anyway, he doesn't just take the theories from her, he takes the wording from her as well. She supplies him with his lines. And so she's very useful to him. And as soon as she stops being useful, he'll make her disappear. She stopped becoming useful last week when all of a sudden Drudge is running stories about them having an affair. That's when she stops being useful. And at that point in time, she disappears without a trace because Trump doesn't give a shit about her. So I don't think she's a problem for his campaign. I think she's only there as long as he wants her to be. As soon as she becomes a problem, poof, gone. Yeah. And so that's my take on the Loomer thing.
Yeah, I think he's totally right. It's the Steve Bannon cycle all over again.
Yes,
that's
it is.
how they operate. And it's been since the start. It's not, I mean, it's a crisis in as much as all of Trumpism is an ongoing crisis.
I just as a little aside, on the way out, she did offer him some strategic advice, which this is some of the advice that he hasn't taken, I think thankfully for him. She tweeted out, "It's time for Republicans to start talking about Kamala Harris's sexual history and the reason why she likely doesn't have any children of her own. I'm willing to bet she's had so many abortions that she damaged her uterus. A woman who has no biological children of her own should not be allowed to make decisions in the White House for your children. Republicans need to run with this messaging and ask why a woman with no kids of her own and just a scarred up uterus is so obsessed with wanting to kill your babies." That's advice he hasn't taken. So
I wouldn't rule it out though.
That's true. There's still 6 weeks to go. But anyway, just one more thing about how Trump surrounds himself with people who give him what he wants. Do you know what his debate support team were? They were Laura Loomer, libs of TikTok like Shia Ratchick, and Jack Posobiec. They were his 3 support team. It's like the 3 biggest nutcases on Twitter were his support team. That's what he wants. That comforts him. He loves it. So yeah. Anyway, anything else on Loomer?
That's probably enough for now.
Probably. It's time for our Stats Nugget. Woo! And this is so cool. This one is another one where I had to check the links. I had to follow up. I just thought, this can't be true. This cannot be true. But I'm pretty sure it is true. This is from a study from Rand Health Quarterly using 2022 figures, okay? The American prices for brand name drugs are 422% of the prices in comparison countries. That probably won't surprise you to hear that. Right? That's the kind of thing we're used to. Melina, a few episodes back, explained how complicated drug pricing was and all these pharmacy benefit managers having rebates and all this kind of stuff. Even when you take into consideration adjustments to account for rebates paid by drug companies to pharmacy benefit managers, the brand name drugs were still 308% of the prices in comparison countries. Once again, that's not a surprise to anyone. Time for a surprise, Emma. 90% of the prescription volume of drugs in America are not brand name drugs. They're unbranded generics. Those drugs, the unbranded generics, which 90% of the prescription volume is in, they cost 67% of the prices in comparison countries. America pays less for its drugs. We always focus on the brand name drugs, the big expensive drugs, the drugs that are the new and shiny and everything. But the generic drugs, which is what people actually buy, the 90% of prescription volume, 67% of the cost of the generic drugs in the comparison countries. By contrast, while America buys 90% of its drugs as generics, in the comparison countries, their generics are only 41% of their drugs. They don't need generics as much because their brand name drugs are cheaper, right? But the fact is, the cheapest drugs available there amongst all these countries are the ones in America that most of the drugs bought are, which is something which I've never heard pointed out before, which I found really interesting. Now, if you're wondering, this is the way my brain works, what are these comparison countries you're talking about here? But, I'll tell you, and I'll give you how much more expensive the generics are in those countries. Canada, 156% more expensive. I didn't say 156% of the price. I said 156% more expensive. So 256% of the price of American generics. Italy, 117% more expensive. UK, 113% more expensive. Japan, 104% more expensive. Mexico, 96% more expensive than America. France, 89% more expensive. Germany, 79% more expensive. Those were the comparison countries. Unfortunately, Australia wasn't one of them. But, yeah, how about that?
Yeah, that is wild. I'm still processing it.
Yes. Yeah. Look, maybe the study's all garbage, but I was having a look through it and it seems to check out to me. Like it looked legit. So yeah, it's a.
I reckon there'd be, like, not to get into it too deeply, but the complicating factor would be that lots of insurance providers would only cover the brand name drugs and not the generics.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be part of it. Also, like I was trying to work out in my head, just like you're doing now. I was trying to sit there going, how does this make sense? And I thought, well, maybe there's a difference between over the counter and in the hospital. Like when you get prescribed drugs in the hospital, maybe they're free in those countries or something. Like maybe there's, like I don't know how that works. The distinction between over the counter and in hospital. I'm just like, it's but whatever it is, it's an interesting area at the very least. Let's to think about in the future. Time for, what time is it? It's policy time. That's it. There we go. Okay. I want to talk about the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act. It's introduced by Chip Roy to the House, and it's essentially the act to try and stop non-citizens voting. And you go, I didn't think they were allowed to vote. Oh, we'll get to that. Okay, so there are some municipalities and a few states and Washington, D.C., which do allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. Now, that happens in some local elections. This bill is not about them, right? That's fine. They can do that. What this bill is about putting teeth into the laws that stop non-citizens from voting. That's the idea. In the words of Chip Roy, he tweeted this out. Federal law currently prohibits states from verifying citizenship status during registration for federal elections. The SAVE Act requires proof of citizenship to register and would remove non-citizens from voter rolls. What are Democrats fearful of? This is basic stuff, you would think. That's what he says. So what would it do? Firstly, it would amend the National Voter Registration Act to require American voters to show proof of citizenship when they're registering to vote. It would also compel states to purge non-citizens from their voter rolls for federal office, quote, at any time upon receipt of documentation or verified information that a registrant is not a US citizen. So if it's pointed out to them that someone's not a citizen, they're compelled to take them off the voter roll. Right now, some states purge non-voters, non-citizens, some states don't. They just leave them there and say they're not allowed to vote anyway. It would also have Homeland Security deport anyone who unlawfully registered. Okay, now Republicans have been goading Democrats about this quite a lot. They have been making out like the only reason you'd possibly resist this bill is because you want to cheat. Mike Johnson, for instance, says, why are Democrats so adamantly against ensuring only American citizens vote in our elections? They want to turn illegal aliens into voters. We must pass the SAVE Act to prevent this. Elon Musk continued his dark turn, which we'll be getting to soon, by reposting Mike Johnson and adding, those who oppose this are traitors. All caps, traitors in caps. What is the penalty for traitors again? He's referring to the death penalty. Okay, so that's Elon Musk for you. Okay, so what's the administration's response to this? The Biden administration put out a statement saying it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. It's a federal crime punishable by prison and fines. The alleged justification for this bill is based on easily disproven falsehoods. Additionally, making a false claim of citizenship or unlawfully voting in an election is punishable by removal from the United States and a permanent bar to admission. States already have effective safeguards in place to verify voters' eligibility and maintain the accuracy of voter rolls. This bill would do nothing to safeguard our elections, but it would make it much harder for all eligible Americans to register to vote and increase the risk that eligible voters are purged from voter rolls. Now, Republicans respond to that by saying, all because something's illegal doesn't mean you're going to catch them or stop them doing it. Right now, they say, there is no effective enforcement mechanism for the law. For instance, Mike Lee is quoted as saying, the same reasoning, referring to the Biden administration reasoning, would likewise suggest that background checks are unnecessary because the law already prohibits felons from possessing firearms. So he's saying, because there's a rule stopping people voting doesn't mean that there's any mechanism to catch them stopping voting. So he's comparing to the background check in that respect. Now, Democrat leaders claimed it would prevent Americans from registering to vote with their driver's license alone, and it would make a passport the only acceptable standalone form of identification. Now, that's not true. Because, yes, you can use a passport, but also you can use a photo ID card that proves a voter was born in the US. Some of them do prove that. Or another form of photo ID along with supporting documentation such as a birth certificate or a military transcript. There are actually a long list of documents in the bill you can use. Most of them are quite rare, though, if we're being honest. We'll come back to them. Dem leaders have also said the legislation would require non-citizens to be removed from voter registration rolls, which is true, require election officials to ask voter registration applicants for proof of citizenship, that's true, and open them up to legal consequences if they do not, that's also true. The bill would create an extreme burden for countless Americans and further intimidate election officials and overburden states' abilities to enroll new voters. Okay, voter discrimination. That is the key to the argument from the Democrats. All right, the Republicans' their key argument is, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you enforce the law? Simple. It's easy to have ID, just enforce the law. The Democrats' argument is, yeah, cool, enforce the law, but when you're enforcing the law here, what you're really doing is not caring about the law. You're trying to scare some voters away. You're trying to make it harder for certain voters to vote, and for those who can vote, you're trying to scare them because they think they might end up being deported or in jail or something as a result. Like, obviously, they're not referring to non-citizens there. They're referring to people who might be confused, who might have been a recent citizen or whatever, and they're confused about whether they're allowed to vote or not. Or they're a prisoner. They're an ex-prisoner, ex-felon. Am I allowed to vote or not? That kind of thing. All right, is this based on a legitimate concern? There are some wild figures out there when we're in this area, like about non-citizens voting, non-citizens being registered. MAGA types are very fond of citing one study in particular by Just Facts, which sounds like a discount warehouse to me for think tanks. But anyway, Just Facts found that 10% to 27% of non-citizen adults in the US are now illegally registered to vote. You might go, how the hell did they find that? They also said that about 6.4% of non-citizens voted in the 2008 elections. And they also said 5 to 13% of non-citizens will illegally vote in the 2024 presidential and congressional elections. That's like 3 million people, according to them. And you go, wow, how do you know that? Well, it turns out it's bullshit. This comes from calculations from a Republican researcher, James Agresti, and they came in turn from a study in 2014 from a guy called Jesse Richmond. If you hear any of those names, please run for the hills. Richmond used a 2008 and 2010 survey from the Cooperative Election Study. That's a real study, okay? That's a good survey, the Cooperation Election Study. Here's their figures. They surveyed 20,000 people. Like I said, it's a good survey. And they found, and well, they were actually surveying these people about how they voted. But just to be complete, they start off with, are you a citizen? 19,500 people said they were a citizen. So 500 people said they weren't a citizen. And so Richmond then assumed that the other 500 must have been non-citizens. And rather than say people who answered the question wrongly or misfiled their forms or missed a tick or whatever, like just when you're talking to 20,000 people, some people make mistakes, right? He assumed that no one made mistakes. There were 500 non-citizens in this poll. And so he then, so that's 2.5%. Sorry, that's 2.5% who didn't tick the citizen box. And if a small fraction of that 2.5% were incorrect, they would account for all the supposed voters who were non-citizens, because some of those non-citizens in the survey said they voted. That's what Jesse Richmond's based on, right? Data analysts have since gone over that with an expected percentage of error in filling out, and the expected percentage of error happens to match perfectly the people who said that they voted while being non-citizens. Like, it matches perfectly, literally perfectly. So let's ignore that study, right? Okay. Usually, non-citizens' voting stats are filled with a blizzard of contradictory statistics that are never really refereed. They just, like, articles just throw contradictory stats at you. So I'll just throw a bunch of, to give you an example, This is from the Deseret News, talking about a Republican report. Officials in Massachusetts found 70 foreign nationals cast ballots earlier this year, and in Ohio they found 137 such registrations, according to the report. In 2023, Virginia officials removed 1,481 voter registrations from the voter rolls over non-citizen status. The report also included a 2014 study that estimated 6.4% of non-citizens voted in the 2008 general election. I just told you about that one. Likely enough to change the outcome of the presidential election in North Carolina that year. I just told you about that one. And sway it towards President Barack Obama. In contrast, another study from the Britain Center for Justice about the 2016 election revealed that 30 votes, or about 0.0001% out of more than 23.5 million votes, were suspected to be cast by non-citizens. So that's a quote I read from an article. They mix up registrations with voting. They're two different things. They mix wild projections one way with projections the other way. They're all contradictory with each other, and they confirm nothing. They mix confirmed non-citizen votes with projected non-citizen registrations. They just mix all this stuff together, right? For what it's worth, though, Georgia takes this stuff really seriously. They check hard. If Tom Gleeson was an electoral officer in Georgia, you go, I'm checking hard. That's what he'd say. And Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger claims to have identified 1,634 potential non-citizens registering over a 15-year period. So to me, that's probably a realistic upper end of non-citizen registration. Like, they look real hard. If they all voted, that could make a difference in a super close election. Let's not kid ourselves. That could make a difference in a very close election where, say, there's 100 or 150 or maybe even 200 or 300 votes difference in a state. Right? That could make a difference. Unlikely, but it could, theoretically. To be clear, though, the problem isn't non-citizen registrations. Registering means nothing. It's about non-citizen voting. So what's the stats on that? What are the proven non-citizen voters? 19 foreign nationals were charged in 2020 in North Carolina. 19 more were charged in 2016. There were 3 charged in Nevada in 2016. The Brennan Center found 30 in 2016. Ohio, as nationally, Ohio found 126 over 5 years in 2017. The feds prosecuted 35 cases of non-citizens voting in 20 years between 2001 and 2021. The Heritage Foundation database found 68 documented cases going back to the 80s. Okay, so we're talking tens of voters here, okay? Not nearly enough to realistically affect an election at a state level. Part of the issue is that there's so little payoff for voting illegally. There's no money, there's no impact on the outcome, just one vote. But if you vote as a non-citizen, you've created a government record of your crime and then you can get deported. So that's pretty risky, right? In fact, there are places where non-citizens can vote in local elections legally. Like I said before, like Washington, D.C., for example, they don't. In 2019, San Francisco School Board had non-citizens allowed to vote. 2 of them voted in San Francisco. In municipal elections in Vermont, 62 non-citizen voters chose to vote when they're allowed to. In Washington, D.C., where the non-citizens are relatively well-educated and wealthy, probably the wealthiest non-citizens you're ever going to find, 15% of the residents there are foreign-born, 500 non-citizens registered to vote. So if you're doing the maths, that's about 0.5% of Washington. It's not much. They're allowed to vote. But Chip Roy would say, hang on, there's no enforcement mechanisms here. You don't know for sure that people aren't voting because there's no enforcement mechanisms. Look, he's right. He's right that in a lot of states, in every state, You can't check if they're a non-citizen. You're not allowed to check if they're a non-citizen. Arizona tried to set up a system where they checked if they were citizens or not when they voted. Well, sorry, registration. The Supreme Court held they were not allowed to do that. They had to accept a federal voter registration form for federal elections, which did not ask citizenship. They're allowed to ask citizenship for state registration and state elections, but not for federal elections. So that's how it works in Arizona right now. If you have ID, you can register as a state and federal voter if you want. If you don't have ID, you can register as a federal-only voter. That's how it works in Arizona. But you're not allowed to vote in a state election if you don't have ID in Arizona. Not a lot of people know that, but that is the case. And it's really useful because now we can use Arizona as data to see what effect these kinds of rules have. Because that's the next step. The next step is to go, okay, we know that there's a tiny percentage that non-citizens might be able to affect the outcome of an election. It's possible. It's a tiny percentage chance. But what's the chance of the voter discrimination that the Democrats are worried about? Is that a bigger or a smaller chance? Let's have a look. There was a survey about this in 2006 by the Brennan Center. 12% of people earning less than $25,000 did not have readily available citizenship documents, as against 7% of the general population. So it discriminates against the poor. It's definitely a potential issue for women. Roughly 90% of women who marry in America adopt their husband's last name. Do they have legal documents showing the name change? Or does their birth certificate now not resemble their current driver's license? And there's no proof that they changed their name. About 1/3 of women possessing proof of citizenship lacked a document bearing their current legal name. So that was in the 2006 survey by Brennan Center. Some states do recognise marriage itself as a legal name change, but not all. In the other states, they need the documents proving change of name. Okay, so there's another survey. The Center for Democracy and Civic Engagement, 2024 now, not 2006. 27% of black Americans lack their driver's license listing their current address against 18% of white Americans. So discriminates against black people. 41% of those aged 18 to 25 and 38% of those aged 25 to 29 lack an up-to-date driver's license, discriminating against young people. Overall, 23% of Democrats lack an up-to-date driver's license against 16% of Republicans. 17% of college graduates lack an up-to-date driver's license against 24% of high school graduates and 41% of high school dropouts. Once again, discriminates against the poor. Now, it's unclear who some of those groups favour because Trump appeals to some of those groups these days. And it is a survey, so this is all a bit theoretical. Maybe these people wouldn't vote anyway. Maybe every single person who doesn't have ID wouldn't vote. How do we know? Arizona. This is how we know. Let's look at what happens in Arizona in the real world. Analysis by VoteBeat suggests that people of colour are slightly more affected than white people in Arizona. Slightly. Not as much as those surveys suggested, just slightly. But it suggests that there's one group that's discriminated much more. It's not women, it's college students. Now, college students tend to vote Democratic. Let's put it this way. Most Arizona voting precincts have fewer than a dozen total federal-only voters who didn't have ID. But of the dozen outliers that have more than 300 federal-only voters, VoteBeat found all but one of them was on a college campus. So it was college campuses all the time that had lots of federal-only voters. And the other one had a homeless shelter. So that is the reality of Arizona. It's college kids, homeless people. And that makes sense. College students who leave home often don't bring their passport or birth certificate to school with them. Of course they don't. And it's the same with people who don't have permanent housing. All right. So can this be addressed by the SAVE Act in some way? The SAVE Act does have a vague provision allowing voters who, quote, cannot provide the required documentation to submit other evidence that they're a citizen. And it provides that state or local officials, quote, shall make a determination as to whether the applicant has sufficiently established United States citizenship. Now, I don't know what that means. That's where the courts will create loopholes in the future, though. The courts will decide what that means. So, okay, so now I've told you all about the SAVE Act. I've told you all about the risks, all about everything. What are your thoughts, Em?
Well, I think it's been a fairly comprehensive debunking of the whole need for this legislation, which is kind of backed up by the fact that the Republicans in the House had initially insisted on tying it to funding bills.
Yes.
And then I was reading this morning, have decided that maybe they won't do that because, again, perhaps they weren't working in good faith when it comes to this legislation, which I think is what you were getting at with
Yes.
a comprehensive overview of how it's actually not a thing or a problem.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, my take on this essentially is that this bill solves a problem that maybe is a 1 in 100 problem with a solution that makes things worse 1 in 20 times. So I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible for it to solve a problem, but it's much more likely it'll create a problem.
Which is consistently what this kind of voting legislation reform is intended to do, exactly as you were outlining. It's intended as voter suppression.
But on that note, let me just say this. I don't have a problem with voter ID in theory if it doesn't disadvantage people. Like the logic that they use, Republicans use, I think as logic is fine to say, why wouldn't you enforce the law? That's fine. I don't mind that. You just don't want to disadvantage people, right? So this is my idea. If I know the whole of Congress is listening, they're all peppers. So
obviously.
So pay attention to this, okay? Back in 2005, there was the Department of Homeland Security created something called Real ID, which are ID cards that are compatible with higher ID standards in a new era of security. Includes citizenship. To get one of these Real ID cards, you need to prove your citizenship, right? But they keep putting back the deadline for when all state ID cards need to be Real ID compatible. It was originally meant to happen, I think, by 2008. And every time they get to the deadline, they put it back another 3 or 4 years. The deadline's currently 2025. They're going to put it back again. They put it back every single time. Why not just for once don't put it back? Why not actually observe it and say, you know what? It'd be good to have some reliable ID in America. Make it free. Make everyone be able to get it. And then you can use your Real ID cards. You want your voter ID. The people who are standing in the way of Real ID are the right, okay? So if they want their precious voter ID, then why don't you just allow this basic bureaucratic move to occur? Like, get some proper ID out there, give it away to free. You kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They get their enforcement mechanism, and everyone else gets proper ID for free. Win-win. That's what I'd do. I don't know. What do you reckon?
I mean, the idea of the Department of Homeland Security having all of that data and control over ID makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know.
That's what people say, but it's not the Department of Homeland Security that has the data. It's the states. The question is it compatible with that? Right? Like, so it's not like there's some big storing house where oh, look, hey, I don't want to I don't want to slow the roll of the conspiracy theorists. Maybe secretly there's going to be some storage facility.
So there's already heaps of storage.
Yeah. But theoretically, this is not saying everyone in Georgia, their details go to Washington. It's saying their details stay in Georgia, but the law makes Georgia have a basic minimum level of identification and data in Georgia. So but I don't, it's never going to happen. They keep on putting it off for a reason. But I'm just saying, for all the peppers out there who are in Congress, take my advice. And like you said, the Congress, this has also been relevant because, yes, the SAVE Act has been, Mike Johnson tried to tie it to the continuing resolution to stop the government shutdown. And that just blew up in his face completely. I mean, he was under a lot of pressure from Trump, like a lot of pressure. Trump was tweeting out, if Republicans in the House and Senate don't get absolute assurances on election security, they should in no way, shape or form go forward with a continuing resolution on the budget. The Democrats are trying to stuff voter registrations with illegal aliens. Don't let it happen. Close it down. So Mike Johnson was under a lot of pressure. And he tried to tie it. And amazing, and Chuck Schumer just said, even if you guys pass this bill, it ain't getting through the Senate. I'm just not going to, quote, the only way to get things done is a bipartisan way. Despite Republican bluster, that's how we've handled every funding bill in the past. This time should be no exception. We will not let poison pills or Republican extremism put funding for critical programs at risk. Even Mitch McConnell said, just don't do it.
My only observation about this whole discussion is the one thing you cannot have is a government shutdown. It would be politically beyond stupid for us to do that right before the election because certainly we'd get the blame. And one of my favorite old sayings is there's no education in the second kick of a mule. We've been here before. I'm for whatever avoids a government shutdown.
But it didn't matter because they couldn't even pass it through the House. 14 Republicans said no, and they could only afford to lose 4. So it wasn't happening. And an amazing thing happened, actually. I don't know if you saw this. Marjorie Taylor Greene nailed it. She nailed it. It was. Let me read you her tweet. This is just true. This is just unambiguously true. This is classic bait and switch that will enrage the base only 1 month before the election when they find out they've been tricked and let down again. The only way to make the SAVE Act a law would be to refuse to pass a continuing resolution until the Senate agrees to pass the SAVE Act and Biden agrees to sign it into law. This would force a government shutdown on October 1 because Biden and Schumer both said they will shut down the government as they are that adamant against the SAVE Act. Johnson will not commit to standing up against the Democrats in the shutdown fight and will allow passage of a clean continuing resolution in order to fund the government because he believes the government shutdown will be blamed on Republicans and will hurt their elections. Johnson is leading a fake fight that he has no intention of actually fighting. Even with a shutdown and a full fight into October, it will be too late for the SAVE Act to make a difference for this election anyway, because absentee ballots would already be being mailed and early voting already starting. I refuse to lie to anyone that this plan will work, and it's already DOA this week. Speaker Johnson needs to go to the Democrats, who he has worked with the entire time, to get the votes he needs to do what he is already planning to do. She was right. She was 100% right. And she was even right about the fact it was too late to affect the election. No other Republicans were pointing that out. It was weird. Did someone else write that tweet? I don't know. Is she learning? Are Marjorie Taylor Greene learning? I don't know. It is amazing. But anyway, she was absolutely right. And then Johnson backed down in an embarrassing fashion, like he was always going to do, and agreed to a 3-month continuing resolution until after the election, with no SAVE Act and $231 million more for Secret Service protections. That was that. Do you have anything else to say about Congress-related matters?
I really just wanted to ask you, partly because of the Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet and because of what Johnson has done, do you reckon he's in trouble? Speaker Johnson?
Well, as in if the Republicans win the House, will he be back?
Yeah. Or will they get rid of him sooner?
I think that he has benefited from the fact that no one else wants his job, which I think is and so the question I would have for whether he'll be back or not as leader is Trump president? If Trump is president, he is gone, because then there'll be like 20 Republicans who want his job. If Trump's not president, I think they'll be very happy to leave Mike Johnson twisting in the wind, doing nothing for the next 2 years after that, and then they'll challenge him afterwards. That's my take.
Uninteresting.
Stats Nugget, woo! Really quick one. Here's a one-liner. But once again, I've got the best stats today, honestly. This is another one where you go, is this really true? Okay, guessing game. Come on, here we go.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
So
yeah. All right. According to the World Bank, Hong Kong has how many mobile phone subscriptions per 100 people? I'll repeat it. According to the World Bank, Hong Kong has how many mobile phone subscriptions per 100 people?
I'm sensing a trap. But I'm going to guess, okay, we've got work phones, personal phones, so a lot of people have probably got 2 per 100 people, like 175.
Very reasonable guess. The answer is 292. What are you guys doing?
How many phones?
292. Oh my God. It makes me wonder whether they've got official phones and non-official phones. There might be a China capacity, China element to this.
I reckon you might be right.
Anyway, looking at the time, we got room for one more topic, I think, and it's one that you requested. It's one that a Pepper requested. Environ Chick. Hey Chaz, and now for something different. Any chance we can have a segment on Elon Musk? She's referring to Elon Musk, who was called Leon by who called him Leon again? I forgot where that came from.
I've forgotten too.
Someone or other. Twitter, I refuse to call it X, was bought with a large loan and leveraged against Tesla, etc. Since its value seems to have tanked and it was already operating at a loss when he bought it, surely this spells bad news. Is his backing Trump self-serving, perhaps, not just for his weird ideologies, but also to simply promote Twitter to get out of his very large hole? These are all excellent questions, and you're welcome, Emma, to answer them as you say whatever you want to say about Elon Musk, because you've put his name on the pinboard, so go for it.
I did, so thank you, Environ Chick, was it?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
So in answer to the question about, whether Elon is being cynical with Trump and doing some savvy business work to up the value of Twitter, I'd like to read you a poem.
Yes, please.
Which Elon posted at 5 a.m. last week after a spree of 159 posts in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Atheism left an empty space. Secular religion took its place, but left the people in despair. Childless hedonism sans care. Maybe religion's not so bad to keep you from being sad. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Real deep.
Yeah. I think I'm starting to think Elon Musk might have a bit of Benjamin Button about him. I think he's getting younger. He's regressing to his 6-year-old self.
I think that might be it. And he's increasing. I don't know if it's increasingly, but because he's kind of always done it. But he's leaning into that particularly weird, AI aesthetic, where almost so many of the images he posts are AI generated, more often than not of himself.
Yeah.
Looking, with much better skin and hair than he has in real life.
And a better body as well, thinner.
Way better. So he does one with like him being an astronaut where the Earth's like reflected in his visor and things like that. Or he'll put up posts of like bits of SpaceX rockets with captions like, "It looks like the ruins of a futuristic long dead civilization." So he's like living out his weird kind of sci-fi imagined world, which is like funny and embarrassing, except that it's Elon Musk. Like if it was just a regular kind of
Yes.
if it was just a regular kind of tech bro posting lame stuff, that would be fine. But like he's not, as the correspondent was pointing out, like he's not just a regular tech bro. Like he has an actually quite scary amount of power and influence. So like just this week, he was at the UN meeting with a bunch of world leaders and like retweeted some guy who said Elon meets with more world leaders than some world leaders, lol. So he has this huge amount of influence. And I can't really speak to you'd probably be more across this than me, Chaz, around the kind of business decisions around Twitter and social media and Truth Social, which is kind of tanking all on its own. Like it doesn't need any insider trading to help that along, I don't think. But what Musk has been doing, and you pointed at this earlier, Chaz, with his stuff on treason and traitors, is amplifying Trump and some pretty appalling conspiracy stuff, and arguably as well, like skating around inciting violence. So which is the reason really that I wanted to talk about Elon Musk, because not long after the second assassination attempt, I don't know if we can even call it an assassination attempt, that's an aside. But anyway, and not long after that, he boosted someone who was asking questions about why they, quote unquote, are trying to kill Trump. And I know you've talked about why they is such a big problem to you, because there is no they, obviously. But Musk kind of boosted this with a question about, and he's posted, "And no one is even trying to assassinate Biden/Kamala," with a thinking face emoji. Right. So immediately, of course, everybody jumps on this. Adam Kissinger has said, quote tweeted this and said, "A reminder that Elon Musk is a contractor for the Department of Defense and the United States government and has said things that would have gotten anyone kicked out of the military. He needs to stop, or the government needs to treat him equally to everyone else. Being rich doesn't put you above the law." Except that it kind of does.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Blaming it, Elon Musk. So he did eventually delete the tweet and then posted a kind of bit of a preamble, but basically the summary is, "Turns out that jokes are way less funny if people don't know the context and the delivery is plain text." So like he's done the, it was just a just joking situation. And he does this a lot, and he's boosted a bunch of other conspiracy theories around Springfield as well.
Yep.
But the point that Kissinger was making is a really important one, because he does have this access to sensitive US government information, and he's arguably inciting violence against the president. And that is, or should be, I think, a concern. And I think this has been an ongoing one for Musk in particular, because of the contracts he's got with Department of Defense. But he works in, Starlink does work with the National Reconnaissance Office, which does like US spy satellites. He's got his Space Force contracts, and Starlink, so his satellite internet company, services the US Navy. So that we're talking pretty significant access to sensitive information, like requiring clearly a security clearance. And this should be and has been an ongoing concern to the Biden administration, but they actually don't know what to do about it, precisely because of those contracts, right? And so as I was kind of looking into this, I was reminded of an article, a New York Times article by David Sanger and Eric Lipton, that was published in November last year in 2023, which said that the federal government has no viable way to break up with Mr. Musk.
Yeah.
As long as it wants to continue space exploration and its kind of brinksmanship and strategic competition with China. So it can denounce him, the White House can denounce him, and they did after the latest assassination tweet, saying that the rhetoric was irresponsible and violence should only be condemned. But they've just done that. That's all they've done. They've issued a statement. But as this New York Times article said, the administration needs him, or at least it needs his rockets and his satellites more than ever. And this is a quote. It says, rarely has the US government so depended on the technology provided by a single, if petulant, technologist with views that it has so publicly declared repugnant. And yet, by the account of administration officials, they have no choice and will not for a while.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think he's too powerful.
He's way too powerful. And this was written almost a year ago now. And if anything, the situation has kind of gotten worse in terms of, the billions of dollars that we've covered. And so I suppose the reason I wanted to put this in, and I absolutely do not have an answer for this question, is at what point does his increasingly unhinged kind of 5 a.m. posting and arguable incitements to violence, at what point is some kind of intervention required? What is the tipping point, or is there a tipping point where somebody has to do something? And I don't know what that is or if it exists, and I guess kind of in that way, Musk almost kind of symbolizes everything that's wrong with American politics at the moment.
I mean, what I would say is that if we think about how scared people have been of crossing Rupert Murdoch for decades, Musk just leaves him in the dirt. Musk is so much more powerful than Rupert Murdoch. Not only does Musk have, the satellites alone make him extraordinarily powerful, controlling information. They make him the dispensation of information. He can turn off people's internet. And
he said that, he did that in Ukraine, deliberately influencing outcomes there, and which sent the federal government into a complete tears. But they, since then haven't done anything to change that situation.
And by the way, when you're turning off their internet, you're not just controlling information, you're controlling life.
Mm-hmm.
Increasingly as time goes on, he only becomes more powerful, because in 15 years' time, nothing functions without the internet. Nothing. He's people will starve to death if he wants them to in 15 years' time. So that alone makes him super, super powerful. But on top of that, why were people so scared of Rupert Murdoch? The reason I was so scared of Rupert Murdoch was because he had no compunction about going to war with you in his front pages. Elon Musk on Twitter is significantly more impactful than a couple of front pages from the New York Post. I've talked about this before. He has, in my view, corruptly taken over the entire section of For You in Twitter to just be him and his cronies, so that every single person, whether they want to or not, whether they follow him or not, every time they look at their replies, unless they look at their replies every 5 seconds like a nut, every day when they get their replies open, the first 8 tweets they see are from Elon and his friends, even if they don't follow him, and they're all of the same tone. They're all of the same thing. If Elon Musk wants your opponent to win an election, he is much more of a nuisance than Rupert Murdoch ever was. And he's much more willing to go further as well. And he won't just do it once. He'll do it, as you say, was it 169 times a day or whatever it was?
59, I think.
159 times a day. There's 159 editions of the Elon Times that comes out of the day. And he'll just keep on hammering you. And once again, you can say what you will about Rupert Murdoch, but he didn't spread misinformation like Musk does. Like, yeah, sure. I'm not saying that he didn't spin. I'm not saying I'm not saying he's a handmaiden of truth. What I'm saying is that Elon Musk is a different kettle of fish entirely. Like it's so Musk will punish you politically so much more than Murdoch would. And on top of that, he's also got the other reasons he's so powerful. And in America, Tesla is incredibly powerful as well, unless you want the entire future of your transportation sector to be provided by China. He's critically important there as well. So I think he's way too powerful. I don't think there's any chance of an intervention of any kind whatsoever. I don't see how it's possible. I think he's already out of control, and I am fearful for where he's going because I don't think he's in control of himself. I think that he is, we've talked about this a few times, I think he's a bit nutty. One thing I haven't said before is I mean, I'm doing a bit of psychoanalysis here. I read a piece about this a few weeks ago, which suddenly struck a chord with me, that I think it's not a coincidence that there's a bunch of South African boys, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, there's another one as well, I've forgotten who are all heading down the same path, who are all activated by the same issues. I don't think Elon Musk is becoming a right-winger. I think people talk about him like he's a conservative. I don't think he's a conservative. I think he is a radical about migration. That's what I think. I think he's obsessed with the woke mind virus, as he calls it, and migration. The woke mind virus is entirely a reaction to his daughter, who rejected him, and she's transgender. The migration thing. Look, I feel awful saying it, but I think it's related to South Africa. I really do.
100% it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they grew up in an environment where they absorbed the idea that black people might kill them all, and they were worried about it. And I'm not saying that they were super racist. I'm just saying they grew up in a paranoid, fearful environment, which was based on race. And they have now gone to America and they've taken that paranoid, fearful point of view based on race, and now they're applying it to migration. And people know my views on migration. I'm a very, very big proponent of legal immigration, but I give props to, I've never excluded the idea of illegal immigration being a problem. I've always said, that this needs to be controlled, and you need to, for everyone's sake, for the country's sake, for the illegal immigrants' sake, for everyone's sake, you need to have some kind of control over this situation. And so I'm not like some super lefty on migration issues. I understand where they're coming from, but these guys are paranoid and nuts, and they elevate crazy shit and things that aren't based on facts at all. And it's scary that how much they're controlled by their own psychology, and they can't seem to see it. It's just so obvious to everyone else.
Yeah, it's so transparent.
Yeah, and so that worries me, because I go, if that's what he's like when he's 50. What's he like when he's 70, when people really start to go downhill? What's he like when he's 80? I mean, we've all watched our parents become a little bit nutty as they get older. What's Elon Musk like? He's starting like this. It's just because he's going to be this powerful for the rest of his life. If anything, he's going to become more powerful. Yeah. So what are we dealing with an 85-year-old Elon Musk? I think it's a very scary situation. I don't know what you do. I don't think there is anything you can do. It's the only thing, and this is the worst answer of all. The solution to how to deal with Elon Musk is to elevate someone else who's more powerful. That's the reality. And that person's even worse, whoever they are. It's a scary situation.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree that there's nothing that can be done.
Well, what can you do?
I think the things that you can do aren't necessarily realistic politically right now.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that's inevitable for all time, but right now it's particularly difficult. But I think you can do things with Musk too, like reduce his power. Like you can, have decent wealth taxes that we, intended to get into, I think, at one point. But you can do the kind of Bernie Sanders argument that every billionaire is a policy failure and kind of move from there. The US government can, invest its own money in Department of Defense, in satellite technology, in rockets. It just doesn't. It chooses to outsource them to private companies. And, the fact is there's only really one that can do it because of all the government subsidies that it received and continues to receive. That you can unpick a lot of that. But I think exactly as you're pointing out, Chaz, you have to have a Congress and an administration who's actually willing to do that and willing to take the political risk of doing that.
I think that's a great answer. My response to that would be, number one, I don't think a wealth tax would be found to be constitutional if they ever pass it. But if they did pass a wealth tax, Elon Musk stops being a citizen the next day. So that's not going to stop him.
Goes back to where he came from?
Maybe. Don't all these billionaires or trillionaires all want to head to New Zealand? You'll end up in New Zealand.
Yeah, they're all building bunkers.
Yeah. It's but yeah, I think he's got too much money to take his money now. He can just take his money and just go wherever he wants and go to Russia. He can do whatever he wants. So I don't know about that. Government building its own satellites, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's that is one response. I actually did think of something while you were saying that as well, which makes it less inevitable. But I don't think it's a government response. I think it's I think I suddenly just caught myself and just thought, oh, you idiot. You've forgotten the most basic point whenever we have these kinds of discussions, which is technology solves this for you. Satellites are only useful until there's something else that replaces the satellites. You know what I mean? Like just the internet, the Starlink is only useful until there's something that supplants Starlink. And we don't know what it is yet. But when we talk about 85-year-old Musk, that's 35 years away. There's going to be something. He is not going to be all powerful forever because there is going to be someone who dominates some new technology we don't even know about. That's going to be much more important than what Musk does somewhere down the track. But I mean, that does take us to what I just talked about before, about the person who's more important than him is their own worry. But that's where what you're saying comes into effect. You don't need – the wealth tax is too late for Elon Musk. But if you created a proper system in America, then you can stop people as they're rising. That's what you can do. Like if you had just proper income taxes, they're legal, they're constitutional. If you just had real income taxes and you had real capital gains taxes and things like that, then yeah, you stop the next person becoming a trillionaire because that's the next one. The next one's a trillion. Yeah. But anyway, anything else to say about Elon Musk? We've given him a pretty good go.
Yeah, I think I've had enough Elon Musk. I've got to be grim.
Yes, I think we've probably hit. I got no sense of how close we are to 3 hours, but I think we're close enough. It's now 12:10 in the morning. Honestly, I'm very impressed, Em. Thank you very much for staying up this late. It's not like Emma asked to record this at this time. She valiantly was happy to stay up to wait for me to give me a chance to do some preparation after I wrote the script for the show. So thank you very much for that, Emma. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. It was great fun. Thanks.
Thank you. We are going to, of course, have another PEP on Friday. This time, I think it's going to be a tripod with Bill and Melina. Dave is away this week, yeah. And also, as I teased at the end of the last PEP, very special announcement at the beginning of the next PEP, which is very exciting stuff. I will see you guys on Friday, and Emma, thank you very much. I will see you very soon for another one. Hopefully, I mean, this was great, but hopefully in the studio, so I'm not twice as loud as you, as I have a suspicion I am in this one. I'll find out when I get into the edit suite. But thank you so much. You're wonderful.
My pleasure. Hopefully it's in real life next time. Thank you.
Until then, until Friday, stay peppy.